Welcome to Creepy Vibes. Tonight's video features 20 creepy, true Texas road trip horror stories. These aren't urban legends, they're real experiences, sent in by people who were just passing through long, empty stretches of highway, strange gas stations, faces that showed up where no one should have been. Stories that remind you, in Texas it's not just the towns that hold danger, it's the silence in between. If you enjoy disturbing true stories told in a calm, realistic tone, be sure to subscribe. Most people watch and move on, but the ones who subscribe, they don't miss what comes next. Tell me, where are you watching from, and what time is it there right now? Because stories like these, they always seem to hit a little harder after dark. Let's get into it. This happened 3 years ago. But it's never left me. I've told a few people, never in full detail, because when I do, they give me that look like maybe I'm not totally right in the head. But I know what I saw. Or maybe it's better to say I know what I felt. It was early November 2022. I was doing a solo drive from Houston to Santa Fe. I like the long stretches of road. Windows down, coffee in the cup holder. Playlist bouncing between classic rock and podcasts. Something about being on the road by myself helps me think clearer than I do at home. I left late, way later than I should have. I remember it was 11:24 p.m. when I finally hit the highway. My plan had been to stay somewhere near Lubbock, but I ended up pushing farther. I don't remember why exactly. Probably just didn't feel tired yet. The roads were empty, the weather was cold and dry. That kind of bone-dry Texas cold that sticks in your sinuses and makes the stars look sharper than usual. Somewhere around 3:30 in the morning, I realized I was running low on gas. I was about 20 miles east of a town called Childress. If you're not from Texas, you probably haven't heard of it. It's small, quiet, flat, the kind of town you only pass through unless you lived there. I checked Google Maps, found a station just off US 28-7, and took the exit. The gas station, I want to say it was a Valero, but I'm not 100% sure, looked old but functional. Flickering canopy lights. One pump had an out-of-order bag over the handle. There were no other cars around, which made sense. It was dead quiet. Even the wind had stopped. I remember thinking how still everything felt. I pulled up to pump 3, turned off the engine, and stepped out. The pump was older, digital, but faded. The screen had that burned-in shadow from too many years of use. I slid my card in and it beeped, slower than normal, then approved. As I started pumping, I remember focusing on the rhythm of it, the soft click-click of gas flowing, the distant buzzing from the overhead light. I wasn't thinking about anything in particular, just tired, zoned out. Then I felt it. Not heard. Felt. It was like a static charge in the air, the way the hairs on your neck rise before a thunderstorm. I looked up and someone was standing right next to me. I didn't hear him approach. No footsteps. No gravel crunch. Nothing. He was just there. A man. Maybe late 50s, early 60s. Medium build, wore a heavy coat. Brown canvas, like something you'd wear on a ranch. His skin looked gray in the gas station light. Not sickly, but like he hadn't slept in years. What I remember most, and this part is hard to explain, was that he wasn't looking at me. He was looking at my hands, just staring at them, unblinking. I didn't say anything at first, just froze. I thought maybe he needed help. Maybe he was homeless. But there was something about him that made me not want to speak. Not fear, exactly, but instinct. Then the pump clicked, tank full, and that seemed to break the silence. He leaned in slightly and said, "You should keep moving. Don't stop until you hit Amarillo." That's all he said. His voice was calm, measured, like someone giving honest advice. Not a warning, not a threat, but not casual either. I didn't respond. I didn't even finish what I was doing. I just pulled the nozzle out, dropped it back into the holster, got in my car and drove off. No receipt, didn't screw the gas cap back on, didn't check the mirror for 5 minutes. I didn't feel safe until the highway lights reappeared. When I finally got to Amarillo around 6 a.m., I pulled into a diner to collect myself, ordered a coffee, sat down and tried to shake off the encounter. It felt like a dream, or something from a movie. But when I went back out to check my car, the gas cap was still off, so I knew it happened. Still shaken, I called the gas station later that day. I just wanted to ask if they had cameras, if someone had been out there working, or walking around the pumps. The guy who answered sounded half asleep. I told him what happened, carefully, not mentioning anything too weird, just that a man approached me, and I wanted to know if anyone had seen him. There was a long pause. Then he said, kind of slowly, "Pump 3 hasn't worked in months, man." I told him that couldn't be right. I'd used it that night. He said, "No, I mean it. Screen's dead. We've got a sign on it now. Probably had one then too." I didn't argue, just thanked him and hung up. But I know it worked. I watched the numbers climb. I paid with my card. I drove 120 miles to Amarillo on a full tank. I checked my bank statement later that week. No charge, nothing pending, no authorization hold, no Valero, no gas and go, no Childress fuel, just blank, like it never happened. I haven't driven that stretch of highway since. Every once in a while, I'll wake up around 3:30 a.m. and think about him, the coat, the voice, the way he stared at my hands. I still wonder what would have happened if I'd stopped anywhere before Amarillo, if I'd pulled over for a bathroom break or nodded off for a nap. I don't know what he was warning me about, but I believe him. I kept moving, and I'm still here. I don't know if this story is supernatural. Maybe it's not even that remarkable to anyone outside of me and my friend Jacob. But it left a mark on me, like something got in and never left. This happened in September of 2019, about 3 weeks before everything in my life felt off. Jacob and I were driving back from Oklahoma. We'd gone up there for a weekend thing, just hiking, drinking, watching garbage TV in the motel room. We were both in our late 20s and burnt out on city life. He worked for a pest control company. I was freelancing IT gigs and sleeping weird hours. We hadn't seen each other in a while, so we made time. Anyway, we were on our way back to Denton, Texas. That's where Jacob lived at the time. Sunday afternoon, sky overcast, temperature maybe 82 degrees. Muggy. The air felt thick. We were on US 377, just south of Gainesville, and planned to cut through some back roads near Aubrey to avoid traffic. Jacob was driving his dad's old Ford F-150. It was this 1996 rust bucket with bad shocks and a weird smell like burnt coffee and mildew. The kind of truck that felt like it had history. It had been sitting in his dad's garage for a couple of years until Jacob got it running again. We were about 20 minutes outside Denton when the sound started. It was subtle at first, barely noticeable over the tires and wind, but I remember the way Jacob's expression shifted. He turned the music down and said, "You hear that?" It was like metal on metal, a scraping, grinding sound. Not rhythmic, not tied to the wheels, just a long, inconsistent screech. Not loud enough to be urgent, but constant enough to get under your skin. I leaned forward and listened. "Yeah, could be the brakes?" "Nah," he said, brow furrowed. "It ain't the brakes." We pulled off the highway at a gas station in a dead little place called Ponder, middle of nowhere. No other cars. Just a Circle K, a rusted ice machine, and an empty air pump. Jacob popped the hood. Steam rolled out, but not much. Everything looked okay. Belts were intact, no smoke, no obvious leaks. I'm not a car guy, but Jacob knows his way around an engine. He muttered to himself, checking hoses, touching metal. Everything seemed fine, but the sound kept going, except now it wasn't coming from the engine bay. It was behind us. We both turned at the same time. Jacob walked toward the back of the truck like maybe the muffler or tailpipe was loose. I stayed by the passenger door and listened. The sound got louder. Still metal on metal, but somehow deeper. Not high-pitched like a scrape, but more like a churn. Like an engine turning over underwater, or something being wound too tightly. Jacob crouched near the bumper. "You hearing this?" I started to answer, but then froze. The engine roared to life. The truck's engine. It turned over and started, even though neither of us was in the cab. Jacob jumped back like he'd been burned. "What the?" he shouted, stumbling away. I swear to God, nobody was inside. The keys were still in Jacob's pocket. He pulled them out and held them up to me with this stunned look, like he couldn't process what had just happened. The truck idled for maybe 10 seconds, then shut off. The only sound was the cicadas in the trees and the buzzing lights over the gas station sign. Jacob finally said, "Let's just get back to Denton." We drove in silence the rest of the way. I kept checking the mirrors. I don't know why, but I had this pressure in my chest, like someone was in the back seat, but every time I looked it was empty. We got to his place around 6:20 p.m. We didn't talk much after that. I said goodbye and drove home to Fort Worth, but something followed me. I started noticing small things first. My apartment smelled like the inside of that truck, burnt coffee and mildew. I hadn't even taken anything from the truck, not even my backpack, but it was like the smell clung to me. Then I'd hear sounds in the middle of the night, not like footsteps or knocking, nothing cliché like that. It was the same grinding noise, soft like it was behind a wall, like something twisting against metal over and over. One night around 2:30 a.m., I was lying in bed half asleep when I heard it outside my window. I live on the 3rd floor. I didn't look, I just stayed frozen, staring at the ceiling until morning. A few days later, Jacob called me. He sounded like he hadn't slept. "You've been hearing it too, right?" he asked. I didn't answer at first. I left the truck at my dad's, haven't touched it since, but I still hear it, every night. That was the last time we talked about it. A week later, Jacob quit his job, stopped answering texts, his social media went dark. His mom told me he left town. No note, just packed a bag and vanished. I drove past his dad's house the following weekend. The truck was still in the driveway, under a tarp, but I swear I saw exhaust coming out from underneath, even though it hadn't moved. I still hear the sound sometimes, in parking garages, on quiet streets, in my dreams. It's not loud, but once you've heard it, it's unmistakable, like metal grinding on something that isn't there. Sometimes I dream that I'm back in the passenger seat, and Jacob's driving again. We're somewhere outside of Denton, and the sky's turning this sick yellow-orange color. The truck starts making the noise again, and I look over at him, but he's not looking at the road. He's looking at me, and his mouth is open, not moving, just open, wider than it should be, and something is inside. It looks like engine parts, black hoses, belts, spinning gears, moving, pulsing, grinding. And the last thing I always remember before waking up is the smell, burnt coffee, and mildew. I don't normally post on here, but I think about this every time I get on a highway alone. I guess I just want to tell it in case someone else has had something similar happen. This was in the fall of 2021. I had taken a week off work to visit my cousin in El Paso, and I was heading back home to Abilene. If you know Texas, then you know that whole drive feels like an open desert stitched together with nothing but scrub brush and bad radio. Between San Angelo and Midland, it's a whole lot of nothing. Flatland, long straight roads, dust storms if the wind's bad. I left San Angelo around 2:40 p.m. It was one of those overcast days where the sky looks low and smothered in gray. Not quite stormy, but weirdly quiet. No birds, no bugs, just wind. I had a full tank, some beef jerky, a gas station Red Bull, and my old Honda Civic humming along. I like driving long distances. It gives me time to think. But what happened on that stretch has burned into my memory like a scar. It started maybe 20 minutes out of San Angelo. I noticed a car behind me, a white sedan. Nothing fancy. Kinda looked like an older Hyundai or maybe a Camry. At first I didn't think anything of it. I was doing about 70, maybe 72, and it was just far enough back that I couldn't see the driver. No big deal. But after about 10 or 15 minutes I glanced again and it was still there. Same distance. Not gaining, not dropping back, just hovering. Maybe 3 car lengths, and it stayed there. No matter if I sped up a little or eased off, it adjusted with me. It wasn't tailgating exactly, it was just too consistent. I told myself I was being paranoid. Long drives mess with your head, and sometimes other cars just happen to be going the same way for a while. Still, I kept checking my mirror. Every few minutes, still there. Same white sedan, same distance. No license plate, not even a temporary tag, just an empty frame. By 3:30 I was getting genuinely unsettled. I passed 3 exits where I thought about pulling off. One was a diner with a single truck parked out front. The next was a busted old RV park with weeds up to the signs. Each time I'd slow a bit, hoping the car would either pass me or turn off. It didn't, just stayed behind. I finally pulled off at a Shell station near a place called Sterling City. It was one of those lonely pumps with a tiny store. the kind where the cashier watches you the whole time from behind a plexiglass window. I didn't see the white car follow. In fact, when I turned off the highway, it kept going straight, right past the exit. Didn't slow down, just glided by. I sat there in the car for a minute, trying to shake the weird feeling. My hands were sweating. I got out, stretched, filled the tank even though it was still mostly full. Bought a bottle of water and a Snickers. I remember the lady at the counter looked up and said, "You okay?" I must have looked spooked. I told her I was fine, just tired. Then I got back in my car. I swear to God, the second I turned the ignition and glanced at the rearview mirror, my stomach dropped. The white sedan was there again, not pulling in, not coming down the road, just there, already behind me. Same distance, like it had never left, like it had been there the whole time. I didn't see it arrive. There's only one road into that gas station, and I had a clear view of it the whole time. It hadn't come in, but somehow it was back. I backed out of the lot and eased onto the highway, my eyes darting between the mirror and the road. Still there. No plate, no driver I could see. Just dark, like the windshield was tinted past legal, the kind of tint you see on security vehicles or hearses. I started to test it. I sped up to 80. It did too. Slowed down to 60. Same. I even changed lanes twice, pretending like I was going to pass a non-existent car. The white sedan matched me every time, always at that same unnatural distance, like it was tethered to me. The radio started acting up around then. Static would creep in, even though I was listening to a downloaded podcast. At exactly 4:04 p.m., my GPS glitched. It blinked out for a second, then said rerouting, 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 over and over. I wasn't even off route. That's when I saw something else. I was coming up on one of those big green highway signs, the kind that tells you how far you are from the next towns. It said Midland, 47 miles. Midland, 47 miles. All three lines were the same. Same font, no other cities listed. I blinked, thinking maybe I was seeing things. Looked in the mirror, still there. I passed the sign. I wanted to go back and take a photo, but I just couldn't bring myself to stop. Then my phone rang. It was my mom's number, but she died in 2019. I didn't answer. I just watched the screen flash her name until it went to voicemail. No message was left. I pulled over right after that, heart pounding. The white sedan passed me, slowly. No turn of the wheel, just glided by. But as it passed, I swear it flickered, like a bad video, just for a second. Then it was back to solid. It kept going, down the highway. I sat there shaking, trying to breathe. After about 5 minutes, I started driving again. I figured it was gone. Maybe it had finally passed me. Maybe I imagined everything. But when I hit 65, I checked my mirror. It was back. Same place, same speed. I nearly started crying. I called 911, told them I thought I was being followed. They asked for the make and model, and I couldn't give them a clear answer. I said it was a white sedan with no plates, possibly a Camry. The dispatcher said they'd notify Highway Patrol and asked me to stop at the nearest populated area. When I reached the outskirts of Midland, I pulled off into a busy Walmart parking lot. I figured plenty of people, cameras, lights, I'd be safe. I parked under one of those tall sodium lights and waited. No white car, nothing behind me. I sat for 15 minutes, walked around, even went inside the store. I called a friend, told him what happened, and he offered to meet me for the rest of the drive home. I declined, said I was fine, but when I got back to my car, there it was in the mirror again. Same distance, same speed when I pulled out, same emptiness where the license plate should be. I didn't look back after that. I drove home shaking. The mirror turned upward so I wouldn't have to see. But every once in a while, especially when I'm alone, driving long highways, I'll get that feeling, that tug in my stomach, like something is behind me, just out of view. I'll glance in the mirror and see nothing, and I'll remember that flicker. And sometimes, late at night, I get calls from my mom's number again. They never leave a message. I don't really post on Reddit, but a buddy of mine told me about this sub. Said it's a place where people share weird, messed up stuff that's happened to them, and that maybe it helped to write this out. I haven't talked about it since it happened last fall, and I still don't really understand what I experienced, if I experienced it at all. This happened in October 2023. I was driving west from Austin to El Paso, Texas. It's a long, boring stretch of highway if you've ever made the trip. Lots of flat scrubland, long gaps between gas stations and towns that feel like they haven't had a new resident since the 80s. I was heading to El Paso for a photography job. I do freelance photo and drone work for small real estate companies, and I'd picked up a gig shooting a few properties around Sunland Park. The guy who hired me wanted sunrise shots, which meant I had to be there by like 6 a.m. the next morning. I left Austin around 6:45 p.m. I remember the time because I filled up at a 7-Eleven on Airport Boulevard before I hit the road. I figured I'd drive most of the way through the night and catch a couple hours of sleep in the car when I got close. I'd done overnight drives before and didn't think much of it. I passed through Fredericksburg and Junction without anything weird happening. It was cold that night, not freezing but colder than usual for Texas. Around 45F, the roads were mostly empty except for the occasional trucker. I had music on for a while, then switched to talk radio. Then silence. Somewhere around 1:15 a.m. I passed through Alpine, which is really the last proper town before the long stretch to Marfa and Van Horn. After that it's just desert and dark. And here's where things start to get not surprising out there, but it was completely dead. No bars, no data, couldn't load maps. Even the GPS dot froze. I figured I'd just lost service for a bit, but what I noticed next was the radio. I always keep the radio on low, just background noise to help keep me alert. I had it tuned to some local AM station that was playing late-night jazz. But after I passed Alpine, the signal started to break up. Lots of static, little audio. Again, normal. But then a different signal faded in, like it was being pulled through the static. It was faint at first, just this low, whispery noise. I thought it was interference or maybe some preacher's broadcast bleeding through. But the longer I listened, the more I realized it wasn't music or a sermon. It sounded like breathing, like someone breathing directly into a microphone. Low, rhythmic, close. Then every 10 seconds or so through the breath, a voice would say something. Not a full sentence, just 5 words. Get out of the car. It was quiet, like it was meant to be in the background, but once you heard it, you couldn't unhear it. Male voice, probably. No accent I could place, just that phrase on a loop mixed into the static. I turned the dial, tried other stations. Nothing. Just that same whispering channel following me as I kept driving west. Get out of the car. I would have thought I was imagining it, honestly, if not for the fact that the breath had this presence. Like I could hear it shifting, moving. The mic would pick up what sounded like fabric brushing against it. Like whoever it was, if it was anyone, wasn't just speaking. They were there, and they were close. It went on for maybe 15, 20 miles. I was trying to stay calm. I even laughed a little to myself, figured maybe some college kids had set up a pirate station to freak people out. But my hands wouldn't stop shaking on the wheel. Get out of the car. I didn't. I just kept driving. At one point I pulled over to the shoulder to pee, about halfway between Alpine and Marfa. I left the engine running, lights on, and stepped out. As soon as I closed the door, the radio cut off. Silence. No static. No breathing. Nothing. Just the wind moving through the grass and the occasional creak of my truck cooling down. I peed, got back in, and the moment I closed the door, click, the whispering came back on. Not even a second of delay. Get out of the car. Now I was getting nervous, like sick to your stomach nervous. I drove the next 30 miles faster than I should have, glancing at the rearview mirror like I expected someone to be sitting in the back seat. My headlights didn't catch anything, but the darkness out there is total. There are no street lights, no houses, nothing. Just your own lights in the void. I hit the Marfa city limits around 2:10 a.m. And just like that, the moment I passed the Welcome to Marfa sign, the whispering stopped. The radio cut to complete static for about 5 seconds, then flipped back to the jazz station I'd originally been listening to, clear as day. No breathing. I don't know how to explain it. I parked at a gas station that was closed for the night and sat there with the engine off, just staring at the radio. I even pulled the fuse panel to check if maybe some weird interference box had been installed in the truck. Nothing. Just factory parts and dust. Eventually, I fell asleep in the driver's seat for about an hour and a half. I had this awful dream that I was trapped in the truck and something was crawling underneath it, whispering to me through the vents. When I woke up, the windshield was fogged and there was a handprint on the inside of the glass, right in front of where my face had been. I don't have pictures. I wiped it off instinctively, trying not to freak myself out more than I already was. I told myself it was mine, even though it looked too long, too narrow. I tried not to think about it. I made it to El Paso later that morning. The job went fine. I didn't talk about what happened, but here's the thing that keeps me up now. 2 weeks ago, my younger cousin borrowed my truck to drive out to Big Bend with her boyfriend. She texted me that night from a gas station near Marfa. Just a casual message. Hey, is your radio messed up? It's only picking up one channel, and it keeps saying something weird. I called her right away, told her to put me on speaker and crank the volume.
And clear as anything, through the wind in her phone mic, I heard it again. That same voice. "Get out of the car." I told her to keep driving and not to stop until she was back in town. She didn't argue. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's tied to the truck or that stretch of road or something else entirely. But I've started driving with the radio off. Always. And I don't take that route anymore. Because I think, one of these times I might listen.
I don't talk about this much anymore. For a while, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Now I try not to. This happened in late November of 2018. I was 25, living in Denton, Texas, working a soul-sucking desk job at a regional insurance company. My girlfriend at the time, Megan, was doing her master's at UNT. We'd been dating for about 8 months and decided to take a weekend trip together, just to get out of the city, do something different. She found this small Airbnb out near Wichita Falls. An old ranch house, cheap, a little worn down but charming in the pictures. Kind of a retro vibe, linoleum floors, wood paneling, brass lamps. The owner described it as off-grid, peaceful, and perfect for couples. And it was cheap, like $68 a night cheap. That should have been a red flag, I guess. We left Denton on a Friday afternoon, around 3:45 p.m. The sky was already that dull gray that hangs over North Texas in late fall. No rain, but it felt like it wanted to. Windy as hell, though. Gusts pushing the car sideways every now and then. Megan was dozing off in the passenger seat, and I had the heater on low, just enough to keep the windshield from fogging up. We were taking back roads most of the way, farm to market roads, old state highways. It was about 6:15 when we passed through Henrietta. After that, we took this long, empty stretch of road headed northwest. FM 1954, I think. No traffic, no streetlights, just flat land and fence posts and the occasional busted-up mailbox. I remember looking at the clock again, 6:34 p.m. That's when we heard it. Out of nowhere, we heard tires screeching behind us on an empty highway. Megan sat up immediately. "What was that?" she asked. I glanced in the rearview mirror. Nothing behind us. Nothing at all. Just our taillights glowing in the dark. "Did you hear that?" I said. "Yeah. It sounded like a crash." It did. It was weird. It wasn't just tires. It was metal too. Like someone slamming into something hard. Not once, but in a kind of loop. Tires screeching, then a crunch, then again. But when I slowed down and looked around, the road behind us was empty. Flat for miles. There was nowhere for a car to even pull off. We rolled the windows down to listen, but the sound had stopped. Just the wind and the low hum of our engine. It was quiet. Too quiet. Megan asked me to keep driving, and I did. We didn't say much for the next 15 minutes. Eventually, we got to the Airbnb. It was just off a gravel road with no sign or marker, just GPS coordinates and a rusted cattle gate. The house was about a quarter mile down a dirt path, partially hidden by mesquite trees and tall, dry grass. When we pulled up, I remember the wind had totally died down. Everything just stopped. You know how sometimes it gets so quiet you feel like your ears are ringing? Like they don't know what to do with the silence. That's what it felt like. The house itself was small, kind of cute in that rundown country way. There were old rocking chairs on the porch and a rusted tin roof. No lights on, but we found the key in the lockbox like the listing said. Inside it smelled faintly like dust and cedar. The floor creaked like it was announcing every step we took. There were a couple of framed photos on the walls, old black and white ones. People in overalls, kids barefoot in a field. Seemed like family photos, probably from the original owners. We unpacked a little, then heated up some leftover pizza we'd brought. No microwave, just an old gas oven that hissed when you turned it on. We were trying to enjoy ourselves. Megan lit some candles and poured wine. I started to feel stupid for being so freaked out earlier. Maybe the tire screeching was just our imaginations, or a weird echo. Sound does weird things out there. Around 10:30, Megan went to take a bath. I was sitting in the small living room scrolling through my phone when I noticed something. No cell service. Not just one bar, nothing. Zero. No Wi-Fi either. The listing had mentioned limited connectivity, but I didn't expect nothing. I stood by the front door, lifted the phone toward the window. Still nothing. That's when I heard it again. Faint at first, then clearer. Screeching tires. That same awful metallic crunch. Again and again, like someone hitting the same spot on a loop. I opened the front door and stepped outside. The wind was gone. It was dead quiet except for the sound getting louder. It wasn't echoing across the fields this time. It was coming from behind the house.
but there's nothing back there. Just flat land and a barbed wire fence. I shouted for Megan, told her to get out of the bath. My voice cracked when I said it. I don't even remember what she said back, but I was already walking around the side of the house with a flashlight. I wish I hadn't. The light flicked across the weeds, the dead grass, the edge of a dry creek bed. Nothing there, but the sound kept going, not from a distance nearby, like maybe 20 or 30 feet away. The screech, the crash, screech, crash, over and over, but no lights, no vehicle, no movement. I started yelling, "Hello, who's out there? Are you hurt?" Thinking maybe someone had crashed nearby, and the sound was bouncing off the terrain weird, but there was no response, no voices, just that awful loop of destruction. Megan came out wrapped in a towel, her hair wet. "What's going on?" she asked. She looked scared. "I don't know," I said. "It's just listen." We both stood there, frozen. The sound played 3 more times, then it stopped, just like someone turned it off. We went inside and locked everything, every window, every door. I pushed the couch against the front door without saying anything. Megan didn't stop me. We slept with the lights on that night. I didn't sleep much at all. Around 3:15 a.m., I got up to pee and thought I saw headlights through the bathroom window, way out in the field. But when I looked again, they were gone. We left early the next morning. Didn't even eat breakfast. Just packed our stuff, got in the car, and left that place behind. Here's the part I don't like to talk about. As we were driving back, we passed a small roadside memorial. You know the kind, white crosses, flowers, sometimes pictures or candles. It was right along FM 1954, not far from where we'd first heard the sound. There were 6 crosses. I pulled over and walked up to it. Someone had left a laminated newspaper clipping taped to the main cross. It was an old article, yellowed by sun and rain. The headline read, "6 Killed in Highway Rollover, 1998. Apparently a van full of high schoolers coming back from a football game lost control on a slick patch, blew a tire, rolled 3 times, hit a tree, caught fire. All 6 kids died on impact." I looked around. There was no tree nearby, nothing to hit, just that same flat open highway. I didn't say anything to Megan. She didn't ask why I was quiet the whole drive back. That night when we got home, I had a dream. I was standing in the middle of that highway, headlights coming straight at me. But instead of swerving or stopping, they kept coming. I couldn't move, couldn't scream. I heard the tires. I heard the crash, over and over and over. I've had that dream every November since. And sometimes, when I drive alone at night, especially near Wichita Falls, I still hear it. Screech, crash, and I never see the car.
I haven't told anyone this story in years. Not because I forgot. Trust me, I wish I could forget. But because every time I try, I feel like I'm inviting it back. Like talking about it is some kind of beacon. But I heard someone else mention something eerily similar the other night, and now I can't stop thinking about it. I need to get this off my chest. This happened in the fall of 2018, October 13th to be exact. It was a Friday. I remember that because my buddy Eric made a joke about it when we hit the road. We were driving from Austin to Big Bend National Park for a weekend camping trip, a last-minute escape from jobs, stress, and everything else. We planned to stop in Kerrville for food and gas, then push through the rest of the drive overnight. The weather was that weird kind of chilly where you don't feel cold but your hands go numb if you're not moving them. Cloudy, no wind. The kind of night that feels heavy like the sky's pressing down. We were in my car, a silver '05 Subaru Outback. I was driving and Eric was in the passenger seat, mostly messing around with his playlist. It was around 11:40 p.m. when we passed through Kerrville. The town was already quiet, just gas stations and a few diners still lit up. I remember the sign for the YO Ranch Hotel glowing in the dark as we turned onto Highway 16 heading southwest toward Bandera Pass. It's a lonely stretch of road. 2 lanes, no lights, lots of twists. After a few miles, there's just trees, scrubland, and the occasional ranch entrance. No houses you can see from the road. No traffic either. We hadn't passed another car for at least 20 minutes. We were maybe 10 minutes outside Kerrville when Eric suddenly sat up straight and yelled, "Dude, stop!" It scared the hell out of me. I slammed the brakes and swerved a bit before coming to a stop on the shoulder. "What the hell, man?" "There was a guy," he said, pointing back behind us, "on the right side of the road, just standing there. I didn't see anyone. He looked spooked, like legitimately shaken. He was right by that cluster of trees, maybe 10 feet from the road. Pale guy, wearing a dark coat or something. But his face..." Eric paused. "He didn't have eyes. Smooth. like they were never there. I waited for him to laugh or say gotcha or something, but he didn't. He just kept staring out the back window. Man, I didn't see anyone. I said, you sure it wasn't a tree or a sign? He shook his head. He was facing the road, standing perfectly still, like he was waiting. I exhaled, trying to shake the tension off. Weird. All right, maybe you're just tired. Want me to turn around? Eric looked at me, then back down the road. He hesitated, then shook his head again. Let's just go. Forget it. So I pulled back onto the road, trying to play it cool, but I kept glancing at the rearview mirror. I don't know what I expected to see. Some eyeless man chasing us down the highway? The trees were thick back there. Whatever, or whoever he thought he saw was long gone now. And then, maybe 3 minutes later, it happened. We were going around a curve when something slammed into the front of the car. I didn't have time to react. There was this thud, like we'd hit a deer, and the whole front end jolted. I hit the brakes, heart hammering. Shit, did you see that? I yelled. Eric was white as a sheet. Yeah, what the hell was that? I threw the car in park and we both jumped out. The front bumper was cracked. No blood, no fur, no dent, but there was something. Handprints on the windshield. Not one, multiple, smudged and streaked, like someone had slapped the glass with dirty hands. Human hands, and they were on the inside. Eric gagged. I think he was seconds away from puking. I just stared, trying to make sense of it. We had just cleaned the interior earlier that day. No one else had been in the car. And these weren't vague marks. They were fresh. You could see the heel of the palm, the stretch of the fingers. Eric got back in the car, locked the doors. I followed. What the fuck? I whispered. Neither of us said much after that. The rest of the drive was dead silent, except for the occasional glance from Eric, like he expected something to crawl out of the back seat. We made it to the campsite around 3:40 a.m., parked, got out, set up our tent with shaking hands and barely spoke a word. I didn't sleep that night. I just laid there listening to every single sound outside the tent, convinced something was watching us from the trees. The next morning I checked the windshield. The prints were gone. Completely. Not faded. Gone. Like they'd never been there. I asked Eric if he had cleaned it. He said no. Swore on his life. We cut the trip short. Left that afternoon. Took a different route back. We didn't even talk on the drive home. Something had shifted between us. Not in a fight way. Just we both knew something was wrong, and neither of us had words for it. A few months later, Eric moved to Colorado. We kept in touch for a bit, but eventually, things faded. He never brought it up again. Not once. Neither did I. But here's the part that really messes with me. Last week, literally last Thursday, I was scrolling Reddit late at night, ended up on r/paranormal. There was a post titled, "Has anyone ever seen a person without eyes?" The post wasn't long, just someone describing a guy standing on the side of a road in West Texas. Said his face was normal, except for the eyes, or lack of. Said the sockets were just smooth, like clay. The top comment, some random account, no post history, just 3 words, he finds drivers. I clicked the user profile. Gone. Deleted. I haven't driven at night since. Sometimes I'll wake up around 3 a.m. and swear I hear something brushing against the glass outside. I live on the 2nd floor, and last night I swear this on everything. I found a handprint on the inside of my bathroom mirror. I live alone. I'm not sure why I'm even writing this. Maybe it's just to get it out of my head, or maybe because I want anyone to tell me I didn't see what I think I saw. I've been over this so many times trying to find a rational explanation, but it never adds up. So here it is. Do what you want with it. This happened in the summer of 2018. I was 26 at the time, living in Corpus Christi, Texas. My best friend Mason had just gotten back from a year working out in Utah, and we decided to do a little road trip to celebrate. Nothing big, just a long drive, maybe crash at a cheap motel or camp if we felt like it. We didn't have a solid plan, just the vague kind of trip you take when you're single, childless, and trying to stretch out the last days of your 20s. We left Corpus around 10 p.m. on a Friday. I remember that detail because Mason had this dumb idea to drive at night and watch the sunrise somewhere in the hill country. He was always into that artsy, quiet life crap. I didn't care much either way, I just wanted to get out of the city. By midnight we were somewhere near Refugio. I was driving and Mason was flipping through the local radio stations trying to find anything that wasn't ranchera or Bible talk. We ended up on this faint FM station, couldn't tell you the name or number now, but it was just static and occasional fragments of old country songs. Kind of eerie in a comforting way, like something you'd hear in a David Lynch movie. I remember the road, FM 666 of all numbers. That's its real designation. Farm to Market Road 666. I always thought that was hilarious growing up, but that night the joke didn't land the same way. It was dark as hell. No streetlights, just our high beams cutting through the humid blackness. The air was thick like it wanted to rain but couldn't make up its mind. I kept the window cracked, just enough to smell that hot grassy scent you get in South Texas at night. Then we saw her. It was just past 12:10 a.m., according to the clock on my dash. We came around this long, straight stretch of road and saw someone walking along the right shoulder. An old woman, gray hair, long pale dress, maybe a nightgown. Her thumb was out like she was hitchhiking. Mason leaned forward and said, "Whoa, do you see that?" I said, "Yeah, but I didn't slow down." She looked wrong. I don't mean supernatural or ghostly or anything, just out of place, like she'd wandered out of a nursing home or something. Who hitchhikes out here in the middle of the night? As we passed, I got a good look at her face. Pale, deep wrinkles. Her eyes caught the headlights and seemed too wide, too alert, like she wasn't tired at all, like she was waiting. Mason twisted in his seat to watch her disappear behind us. "Dude, should we stop?" "No," I said. I didn't even hesitate. I didn't like the way she looked. I don't care how callous that sounds, something about her gave me a cold pit in my gut, like stepping into a room and knowing someone else is already there, watching. We drove in silence for a while, maybe 5 minutes. Neither of us said much. Then Mason sat up straight and pointed. "Wait, dude, what the hell?" There she was again. Same old woman, walking along the right shoulder. Same dress, same hair, thumb out, still facing away from us. I slammed the brakes, not hard but enough to slow down as we passed. My stomach dropped. "What the fuck? There's no way," Mason whispered. We hadn't turned. We hadn't taken an exit. The road didn't curve. It was a straight shot, 5 or 6 miles of uninterrupted blacktop through flat empty ranch land. I rolled down the window and stared as we passed her. Slower this time. She didn't look at us, just kept walking. Mason pulled out his phone and started filming through the rear windshield, but it was too dark. Headlights didn't catch anything, just dust and distance. He was rattled, and honestly, so was I. We didn't talk about it for a while after that. Just drove in silence, every so often glancing at the rearview mirror. Around 12:40, we pulled into a tiny all-night gas station in a town called Skidmore. I needed caffeine, and we both needed to shake off the nerves. Inside, the clerk was this older Hispanic guy with a tattoo on his neck and a friendly attitude. I asked if they had any Red Bull and he pointed toward the cooler. I don't know why, but something made me ask. "You ever drive down FM 666 at night?" The clerk raised an eyebrow and laughed under his breath. "Yeah, why? Ever see anyone walking? Like an old lady or something?" He didn't answer right away, just stared at me, then looked past me toward the parking lot. Then he said, "People see things on that road. That's it." That's all he said. Then he rang up my drink and went back to watching something on his phone. Mason asked me what he meant when we got in the car. And honestly, I didn't want to know. We stayed on Highway 081 after that. No more back roads. We made it to San Antonio by sunrise and got a motel. Spent the next day drinking and pretending the night before hadn't happened. But both of us were thinking about it. I could tell. Here's the part that keeps me up, though. And this is where I start second-guessing everything. 2 weeks later, Mason sends me a link. No message, just a link. It's a local news article from Refugio County. A man had crashed his truck off FM 666 just past midnight. They found his body in a drainage ditch. The weird part, witnesses said they saw him swerve hard, like he was avoiding something. But there were no animals, no other cars, no sign of anything in the road, except one woman who lived nearby said she'd seen someone walking just before the crash. An old woman, white hair, long pale dress. She said it looked like the woman was trying to flag the truck down.
That was the last conversation Mason and I had about it. We haven't brought it up since. But sometimes on hot nights when I can't sleep and the house feels too quiet, I think about that stretch of road. I think about her face in the headlights. I think about how she was always ahead of us, no matter how fast we were going. And I wonder what would have happened if we'd stopped.
I'm not even sure why I'm posting this. I guess because I haven't really told anyone about it in full and I need to get it out. People always say writing stuff down helps. I don't know if that's true, but I'm trying it. This happened in 2018, early October. I remember that clearly because the weather had just started cooling down in West Texas, and I was working a freelance photography gig that had me on the road a lot. I lived in Lubbock at the time, but I was bouncing between jobs, taking photos of abandoned buildings, farmland, small-town architecture, that kind of thing. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid okay, and I liked being out there where everything felt stretched out and forgotten. Anyway, this job had me driving near Abilene. I had just finished shooting a set of old grain silos near Winters, and I was taking back roads to get a few shots of cotton fields. There's this stretch of FM 707 that cuts through a lot of dry open land, some of it cultivated, some of it just flat and empty. I was out there around 5:30 p.m. Sun was starting to lower, but it wasn't dark yet. The sky had that weird yellowish tone that happens before sunset in the fall when the light feels softer but more, I don't know, heavy. I pulled off to the side of the road near an old rusted-out gate, you know, the kind with barbed wire curling around it. I saw this field to my left that still had tufts of cotton in it, mostly dry and gray-looking, not much else around. No houses, no equipment, no trees, just weeds and old fence posts disappearing into the distance. I figured I'd get a few shots of the field with the light behind it and maybe the road leading away. That's when I saw her. She was standing in the middle of the field, barefoot, wearing a white shirt, not like a t-shirt, more like a loose blouse that hung down past her waist, long brown hair, tangled and falling over her face. Her arms were straight down at her sides. I couldn't see her face from where I stood, but the way she was just still, I thought maybe I was looking at a scarecrow at first, but something about her posture felt wrong, too human. I looked around. No cars, no houses, no other people. It was quiet except for the wind brushing through the weeds. I stood there for a few seconds watching. I kept thinking she would move, maybe wave or turn her head, but she didn't, not even a little. My gut told me to leave, but my curiosity, or maybe just my instinct as a photographer, kicked in. I raised my camera, zoomed in and snapped a shot. I looked back up. She was still there, still unmoving. I waited, thinking maybe she was just someone messing around or taking some sort of artsy photo shoot herself. I even shouted, "Hey, you okay?" Nothing. No movement. No reaction. I didn't get closer. I want to make that really clear. I didn't walk into the field. I had a weird feeling that if I did, something would go really wrong. So I got back in my car slowly. I looked at her again as I pulled away, and she hadn't moved. I watched her in my rearview mirror until she disappeared behind some brush. When I got to the motel that night, I was staying at a little place off US 83 in Tuscola. I plugged my camera into my laptop, started transferring the day's shots. The usual stuff came up: silos, fences, road signs. Then I got to the shot of the field, the one with the girl, except there was no girl in it. The field was empty, completely. Same exact angle, same frame I remembered, but there was nothing there, just brittle cotton plants, weeds and dry dirt. I stared at it for a long time, thought maybe I'd aimed the camera wrong, but I knew I didn't. I zoomed in, looked at every part of the photo. No blur, no glitch, no distortion. It was just an empty field. I thought maybe I imagined her, that maybe the heat and the light and the silence had gotten to me. But I remember what I saw. I remember how still she was, how she didn't even blink. I went back the next morning. I couldn't shake the feeling. I drove back down FM 707, found the same gate, the same field. This time in the daylight, it looked completely different, smaller somehow, less eerie. I walked the edge of the field, didn't go in. There were no footprints, no tire tracks, nothing to show that anyone had been there. But what really got to me was that I could see for miles in every direction. If she had walked out of the field after I left, I would have seen her, unless she just vanished. I kept that photo. Still have it, even though it creeps me out every time I look at it. Just an empty dead field. But I can't unsee what I know I saw. Her standing there, barefoot in the dirt.
After that, things started to get weird in small ways. About a week later, I was shooting an abandoned gas station outside Sweetwater. The sun was behind me, and when I reviewed my photos later, in the reflection of the station's broken window, I swear I saw the silhouette of a person standing behind me, barefoot, long hair, same white shirt. But when I turned around while shooting, no one was there. Another time, I was staying with my brother in Amarillo, just to get out of town for a bit. Middle of the night, around 2:40 a.m., I woke up suddenly, not from a noise, not from a dream. Just like my body knew something was off. I looked toward the hallway from the guest room, and I swear I saw the outline of a woman standing at the end of it, just standing. I didn't get up, I couldn't. I blinked, and she was gone. My brother said he didn't see anything, but his dog wouldn't go near that end of the hall for the rest of the week. I stopped taking freelance jobs not long after that. I picked up work in Austin, doing more editing than field work. Haven't been out near Abilene since, but I still get dreams sometimes. Always the same one. I'm back in that field, camera in hand, and she's closer this time. A little more detail each time I dream it. Her face is pale, her eyes are wrong, too wide, no reflection. She never speaks. She just stands there, still, unblinking. Last week, out of nowhere, I got a text from an unknown number. No message, just a photo of that same field, still empty. But this time, there were footprints, bare ones, leading toward the camera. I haven't responded. I deleted the message, blocked the number, but I still have the original photo saved on an old hard drive. I don't know why I keep it. Maybe part of me wants proof that I'm not crazy. Or maybe part of me thinks she's not finished with me yet. Whatever I saw out there, it wasn't a person. And it wasn't a ghost either. It was something else. And I think it knows I saw it.
I'm not sure where to even begin with this, but it's been on my mind constantly for the last 2 years. I've debated posting this 100 times, and maybe typing it out will help. I'm not saying what happened to me was supernatural, but something wasn't right out there. I still haven't found a good explanation for it. This happened in August of 2023. I was driving from Alpine, Texas back to El Paso after a weekend visiting an old college friend. It was supposed to be a simple 3.5-hour drive, and I've done that stretch of desert highway more times than I can count. I took US 90 west until I hit Marfa, stopped for gas, and then headed north through Fort Davis on TX 118. I like that route. It's quiet, open, and you hardly see other cars, especially in the late afternoon. That particular Sunday, I left around 4:30 p.m. It was hot, like 102 Fahrenheit, but dry. Sun was still high. I had plenty of gas, 2 bottles of water, and a working car. My phone was at 80%, and I had a playlist downloaded for the drive. Nothing unusual. The signal usually cuts out after Fort Davis. No surprise there. It's remote, empty land, mostly state park and mountain ridges. Beautiful but desolate. I passed the McDonald Observatory around 5:15, and a little after that, my phone dropped out of service completely. Normal, I figured. Then GPS glitched. It froze for a second, then snapped back, but now it said I was south of the border, somewhere outside Ojinaga, Mexico. I hadn't crossed. I know that area, and there's no way I'd taken a wrong turn. It's all straight roads, no major junctions. Still, I figured the GPS was just bugging out, maybe grabbing a signal bounce off some rogue tower. Happens. I shrugged it off. But then 5 minutes later, something else happened. A little system message flashed on my screen. Even though I had no service, "You are not alone in the vehicle." I nearly dropped my phone. At first I thought it was a bug like some Bluetooth error. I checked my car's interface to see if my phone was trying to connect with another device. Nothing. Then I actually looked around. Front seat, back seat. No one. I even pulled over onto the gravel shoulder to double check. Nothing. I remember the exact time, 5:37 p.m. The sun was still high enough that the car's interior was fully lit. No shadows, no hidden corners. I was alone. I even opened the back doors just to be sure. The desert was dead quiet. No cars, no wind. Just heat and the sound of my own breathing. I stood outside for a few minutes, heart-hammering, trying to rationalize it. Maybe it was a leftover prompt from an app, some stupid Easter egg from Google Assistant. I don't know. I got back in the car and kept driving, feeling uneasy. I kept checking the rear view every few seconds like some part of me expected to see something back there. By the time I hit TX 54, a lonely road that cuts straight to Van Horn, it was about 6:10. That road is even emptier than the last. I didn't see another vehicle the entire time. The mountains on either side made it feel like I was in a bowl. Sunlight bounced strangely off the ridges, and the shadows started to stretch long across the pavement. That's when I noticed something off in my mirrors. At first it looked like a smudge. I wiped the mirror, but it didn't go away. Then I realized it moved. Just a flicker, like something shifting in the back seat. But every time I turned around, nothing was there. I started to feel cold. Not literally, it was still in the high 90s, but that crawling sensation, like when you know someone's behind you even if you can't hear them. I cracked the window just to let some air in, but the silence made it worse. No birds, no bugs, nothing. I told myself I was just freaking out. I was probably dehydrated. I opened a bottle of water and took a few sips, trying to get a grip, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. Then my music cut out. It didn't pause or skip, it stopped. My whole phone went black for about 5 seconds. When the screen came back, it was on the lock screen, and the time said 3:12 a.m. It wasn't. The sun was still up. My dash said 6:24 p.m. The battery had dropped to 32%. It had been over 70 just 20 minutes ago. A new message popped up. Unknown Bluetooth device connected. Passenger audio. I don't even know what that means. I drive a 2019 Honda Civic. It doesn't do anything like that unless you deliberately pair something. I pulled over again, right there in the middle of nowhere. I shut the car off, took the keys out, sat for a second trying not to lose it. The silence outside was thick. There were no structures, no cars, no signs of life, just the empty stretch of TX54 and the mountains on either side casting long shadows. I got out and opened every door, trunk too. I looked under the seats, in the footwells. I don't know what I expected to find, but I felt like something had crawled in with me back near Fort Davis, like something was hitching a ride without ever being seen. At this point I considered turning around, but it was just as far back as it was forward. I decided to press on and get to Van Horn as fast as I could. I turned the music off completely and just drove in silence. The unease didn't go away. It got worse. Every so often I'd hear a soft clicking sound from the back seat, like plastic tapping against the window. When I'd glance back, it would stop. Once I swear I saw something small move behind the passenger seat, like fingers pulling away from the edge of the seat. I didn't stop again. I rolled into Van Horn just after 7:30 p.m. Sun was low now. I stopped at a gas station near the interstate, practically jumped out of the car. I must have looked insane. I paced for a while, filled the tank even though it was still mostly full, and went inside to grab something sugary. The clerk gave me a weird look when I asked if I could check their Wi-Fi. My phone still showed no service, even in town. I connected to their network and immediately, dozens of notifications came in at once. Missed texts, missed calls from friends, my mom, even my bank. But one message stood out. It was from a number I didn't recognize. No contact name, just a text that said, "It knows you saw it." Sent at 6:41 p.m., exactly when I was driving the quietest part of TX54. I didn't reply. I couldn't. The number vanished a second later. Like it deleted itself. I tried to find it in my history, but it was gone. I drove the rest of the way to El Paso with all the interior lights on, radio blaring. I didn't stop for anything. I got in just after 10 p.m. and parked in my apartment's garage. I checked every inch of my car again. Nothing. Over the next few days, weird little things kept happening. My smart speaker would answer questions I didn't ask. My phone would light up in the middle of the night, showing that same lock screen time, 3:12 a.m. Always 3:12. I tried resetting everything, switched phones, sold the car 2 months later. I just couldn't drive it anymore. But here's the thing. About 6 months after it all happened, I was on Reddit and came across a random post in Dar, Texas. Someone had posted a blurry photo of a road sign. No service between Fort Davis and Van Horn. Travel at your own risk. The weird part is, I've never seen that sign myself. Not in all my years driving that stretch. But in the comments, someone mentioned that the sign was taken down in the early 2000s after a string of incidents. No real info. Nothing I could verify. I still don't know what happened to me that day. Was it a glitch? A hallucination? Something else? I'll never know. But I haven't driven that route since, and I won't ever again. Because whatever that thing was, it got in the car, and I don't think it ever really left. I've never told this story before. Not to my girlfriend, not to my parents, not even to my closest friend who I've known since 2nd grade. Not because I'm afraid of being laughed at, or that they wouldn't believe me. Honestly, I'm not even sure I believe me. But because every time I start to think about it again, I feel that same crawling feeling under my skin, like something is still watching. This happened in the fall of 2019. I was driving from Rochester, New York, down to Hartford, Connecticut for a job interview. It's not a crazy long drive, about 5 hours give or take. I left a little later than I wanted to. I think it was around 3:30 p.m. when I finally got on the road. My interview was scheduled for the next morning, so I had booked a cheap roadside motel near Hartford to crash at for the night. It was one of those drives where everything just feels off the whole way. The weather was weird, that sort of half drizzle, half fog where the road always looks wet but it never really rains. My GPS kept glitching too, jumping from one ETA to another like it couldn't decide how long the trip actually was. And about an hour and a half in, I started to feel this weird pressure behind my eyes. Not quite a headache, just pressure. Anyway, I got onto Route 84 somewhere near Binghamton and figured I'd stop at a rest area to stretch my legs and hit the bathroom. It was around 7:20 p.m. by then, already dark. I pulled off into one of those smaller rest stops, not the big service plazas, but the kind that just have a parking lot, some vending machines, and a single building with restrooms and maybe a couple picnic tables out front. There were 2 other cars parked there. One was a beat-up Civic with no plates, kind of odd, but I didn't think much of it at the time. The other looked like a state maintenance vehicle, empty. The place was quiet but not deserted. The building lights were on, flickering slightly in that way old fluorescents do. Inside, it was one of those tiled restrooms that always smells faintly of bleach and something worse. The kind where your footsteps echo too loudly, even if you're trying to walk quietly. There was one long urinal trough along the left wall and 3 stalls on the right. One of them, the far stall, was closed. I could see shoes under the door. They were black, beat-up sneakers. Looked like the kind older guys wear when they mow the lawn or walk laps in the mall. Again, I didn't think anything of it. Just someone else using the bathroom, right? I picked the middle stall, did my thing, and sat there for a few minutes longer than I needed to, just scrolling on my phone, checking emails, trying to ignore the gnawing headache behind my eyes. Maybe 5 minutes passed, then 10. The shoes in the far stall hadn't moved, like at all. I didn't hear any sounds from over there either. No coughing, no shifting, no clothes rustling, just silence. But the shoes were still visible, still pointing straight ahead, unmoving. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe the guy was constipated. Maybe he was just taking a break from driving, same as me. Maybe he was even asleep in there. But something about it just started to bother me. There was a tension in the air, like the pressure in my head had seeped out into the room. The silence wasn't just quiet, it felt intentional. I flushed, washed my hands quickly, and glanced toward the far stall again. Still no movement. I stood there for a second, hand halfway to the door, and something in me just said, check. I don't know why. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was that uncomfortable mix of boredom and anxiety you get on long drives. Or maybe it was something deeper, some kind of warning bell. I walked slowly back toward the stalls and said, "Hey man, you okay in there?" No answer. I stepped closer. "Hello?" Still nothing. I leaned down just a little, like I was going to knock on the door. And then I realized, the shoes were too far back. They were almost touching the wall behind the toilet, like whoever was wearing them had their legs completely stretched out, or wasn't wearing them at all. I crouched just a little, peeking beneath the door, and I swear to you there was nothing there. The shoes were just sitting on the floor, perfectly positioned, heels together, toes forward, but there were no legs, no shadow, no person, just 2 empty shoes. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. For a full 3 seconds, my brain couldn't even register what I was seeing. Then I stood up, backed away slowly, and left the building without another sound. When I got outside, the lot was empty. The Civic was gone. So was the state vehicle. My car was the only one there. I got in, locked the doors, and pulled out fast, tires skidding slightly on the wet pavement. For the rest of the drive, I kept glancing in the rearview mirror. I couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed me. There was nothing in the back seat. I know that. But every few miles, I felt this urge to look, like if I didn't, something would be there. I made it to the motel around 10:30 p.m., tried to sleep, failed, and went to the interview the next morning on 2 hours of restless half-dreams. I didn't get the job. Honestly, I didn't care. A week later, I tried to look up that rest area just out of curiosity. I found a list of all the public rest stops along Route 84 between Binghamton and Hartford. There was nothing listed where I stopped. I zoomed in on the area using satellite view. I remembered the shape of the driveway, the small picnic area out front, the position of the building.
There's no building there now, just a patch of trees and some cracked concrete where a parking lot might have been decades ago. I don't know what I saw. I don't know what it meant, but sometimes, not often, but maybe once a month, I'll walk into a public bathroom somewhere, at a gas station, a rest stop, a movie theater, and I'll see a pair of black sneakers in the far stall. Always the far stall, always perfectly still. I never check again, not anymore.
It's been a few years since this happened, and I still don't really talk about it. I didn't even tell my girlfriend until last year, and I've never mentioned it to my family. I guess it's easier to write it out like this anonymously, because I'm still not sure what to make of it. And to be honest, I don't want to think too hard about it. But I think about it anyway, more than I'd like to admit. This was in Texas, August of 2020, just after the worst of the lockdown stuff. Things were opening back up again, and people were trying to pretend things were normal even though they weren't. I was driving from Austin to Dallas to visit my mom. She'd been going through some health stuff, and I hadn't seen her in months. I took off work early on a Friday and hit the road around 3:15 p.m. It was hot as hell. I remember the car thermometer said 102 Fahrenheit, and the AC was barely keeping up. I had a white 212 Honda Civic at the time. Nothing special, but reliable. I'd had it since college and kept it in decent shape. Plates were Texas standard, nothing custom. Anyway, about halfway through the drive around Temple, I think I needed to use the bathroom and get gas. And if you know that stretch of I-35, you know there's a Buc-ee's just off the highway near Temple. It's massive, like a Walmart of gas stations. You can't miss it. I pulled in around 4:45 p.m. The sun was still beating down. The parking lot was packed. I remember thinking I'd have to park far away from the entrance. I circled the rows slowly, looking for a spot. That's when I saw it. My car, already parked. Same make, same model, same color, same year even. That wouldn't have been weird by itself. Civics are everywhere. But then I saw the plates. Same number, same everything. I stopped my car right there in the row just staring at it. I know that sounds impossible. I know what license plates are for, they're unique. But I swear to God it was my plate. Exact same configuration. Not just close, identical. I even muttered it out loud, reading it off, and then looked back at my own. Same. I sat there for maybe 10 seconds, frozen. A couple cars honked behind me, so I pulled forward and parked 2 rows over, still facing the doppelganger Civic. I must have stared at it for another full minute. I got out and walked over, trying to act casual. It looked just like mine. Same little crack in the back right tail light, same faded inspection sticker, even the same blue key scratch on the driver's side door that happened in a Target parking lot 3 years earlier, and I'd never bothered to fix it. I swear to you it was my car. But I was in my car. I'd just driven it. My keys were in my pocket. I pulled out my phone and started filming it, like just a quick 10-second clip for proof. But then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw movement through the windshield. Someone was sitting in the driver's seat. I hadn't noticed before because the windows were tinted a bit darker than mine. But now I could clearly see a person inside. They were looking straight at me. At first I thought it was a joke, like maybe my girlfriend had pulled something elaborate, or a friend from work, but that didn't make any sense. Nobody knew I was stopping here. It was totally unplanned. I hadn't told a soul. And then the person in the driver's seat leaned forward, just a little, and I swear on everything, it was me. Same face, same hair, same stupid shirt I'd gotten from a thrift store in college. I was wearing it right then. It was like looking into a mirror, except the mirror was a car with tinted windows and the other me wasn't blinking. I stumbled back a step, my mouth just hanging open. The other me just kept staring, expressionless. Then they smiled. Not a big smile, just a twitch of the mouth, like they were amused. I turned around and walked straight back to my car. I didn't even look back. I got in, locked the doors, and sat there for maybe 20 seconds, heart pounding in my ears. Then I saw it in my mirror. The other Civic backed out slowly and pulled into the lane behind me. It paused for a second. I could feel the stare even without turning around. Then it drove off, calm, controlled, not fast, not scared. I waited another 5 minutes before moving. I didn't go inside Buc-ee's. I didn't get gas. I drove straight to Dallas on less than a quarter tank, and my gas light came on before I even got to Waxahachie. When I got to my mom's place, I didn't say a word about it. She was already tired, and I didn't want to add anything weird to her plate. I figured maybe I'd just hallucinated something from the heat, or stress, or dehydration.
But later that night, I went outside and looked at my car. Everything matched. The inspection sticker, the plate, the key scratch. But one thing was off. There was a receipt on the passenger seat from Bookies, dated that day. Timestamp, 4:44 p.m. A bottle of water, beaver nuggets, a hot brisket sandwich. I never went inside, and I don't eat brisket. Since then, small things have happened. Things I could explain away, if I really wanted to. My alarm going off at weird times I didn't set. My phone being in a different spot when I wake up. Finding an app installed I don't remember downloading, Mirror Track. It disappeared before I could even open it. But I think the worst thing happened last year. I was driving home from work about 6:20 p.m. Traffic was light. Weather was good. I stopped at a red light near my apartment complex in Plano. As I was waiting, I glanced in my rear view. Behind me, a white 2012 Honda Civic. My heart dropped. I couldn't see the driver clearly, but I caught just a hint of the face, a shape I knew too well. The light turned green. I sped off. I don't even know if the car followed me. I didn't look back. I changed my routine after that. Took different routes to work. Started using Uber more often. Eventually I sold the Civic and got a new car entirely. Black Ford Escape. New plates. Everything different. But every now and then, when I check my rear view, I see a white Civic behind me. Never close. Never tailgating. Just there. Sometimes I tell myself it's all in my head. Just a weird coincidence. A trick of memory. Some burnout-fueled breakdown. But other times, like last night, I'll wake up and hear my front door lock click, and I'll find dirt on the hallway rug, and the smell of brisket in the kitchen. I don't even keep brisket in the house. I've never told anyone that until now.
It's been a few years now, but I still think about that night at least once a week. Sometimes I dream about it, though dream isn't the right word. It's more like a memory leaking into my sleep. My friend Kyle and I were driving from Austin to Dallas one Friday evening in late October. We were both 23 at the time, just out of college, and I'd gotten a job interview with a digital marketing agency in Dallas the next morning. Since we were both broke and still clinging to the remnants of college friendship, he offered to tag along, make a trip out of it, split a hotel room, get drunk somewhere after the interview. It wasn't supposed to be a big deal. We left around 7 p.m., later than we meant to, because Kyle got stuck covering someone's shift. He worked at a movie theater back then. I remember it because when I picked him up he was still in that black polo and clip-on tie, smelling like popcorn butter and floor cleaner. It was already dark when we hit the highway. Weather was clear, chilly, low 50s maybe. I remember seeing my breath outside the gas station in Round Rock when we stopped for snacks. There was nothing unusual, no storm, no traffic, no bad omens. And then about halfway into the trip somewhere near Waco, my GPS suddenly rerouted us. Kyle was messing with the aux cord, trying to get Spotify to work when the voice cut in. Turn right in 500 feet, it said. The main highway, I-35, was showing red like standstill traffic, so I figured it was sending us down a back road to shave off some time. I didn't really think twice about it. We'd taken back roads plenty of times before when driving out to lakes or state parks. Texas is full of them. Usually quiet, sometimes eerie, but never dangerous. At first it was just a normal 2-lane road, still paved though without streetlights. Then after about 3 miles it told us to turn again. This time onto a dirt road. Not gravel, dirt. You sure about this? Kyle asked, squinting at the map on his phone. I shrugged. I mean, it says it'll save us 15 minutes. He didn't say anything, just looked out the window. I remember the way the trees pressed in on both sides, the way the canopy hung low like a tunnel. Within seconds it felt like we'd entered some kind of unnatural darkness. Even with my brights on, I could barely see more than a few car lengths ahead. Everything outside the headlights just disappeared. No moon, no wind, not even bugs. It felt wrong almost immediately, but we kept going. 5 minutes in, the road narrowed. Branches scraped the sides of the car. The dirt had turned to uneven mud in places like someone had driven through it recently, but not often. 10 minutes in, the GPS told us to continue straight for another 4 miles. I slowed to a crawl, creeping over rocks and dips in the road, gripping the wheel tight while Kyle scanned the woods. Neither of us were talking by that point. Then we saw it. The road opened into a small clearing, maybe 100 feet wide, surrounded by woods on all sides. In the center were 5 or 6 cars, burned out, rusted, smashed. Some looked like they'd been there for years, others more recent. No people, no signs of life, no sound. I stopped the car at the edge of the clearing, just barely out from the tree line. We didn't say anything, we just stared. One of the cars, a blue Ford Explorer I think, still had a child's car seat in the back, black with orange stripes. Another had a license plate half melted off. All of them were facing inward, like they'd formed a circle, like they'd been placed that way. "Is this some kind of junkyard?" Kyle finally asked, but it was more like he was trying to rationalize it to himself. I didn't answer. I was too focused on the fact that we were the only vehicle with its headlights on. The forest was dead silent. No wind, no crickets, no leaves rustling. Just our engine humming. I remember that exact moment, 9:46 p.m. I checked the clock on the dash, not consciously, just as a reflex. I wish I hadn't. I put the car in reverse, slowly, quietly. I didn't want to turn around, there wasn't enough room anyway. So I backed out the same way we came, inch by inch, trying not to spin the tires. We didn't speak until we were a good 5 minutes back down the road. I think we were both holding our breath the entire time. When we finally hit pavement again, I pulled over and turned off the car. Kyle got out and threw up on the shoulder. I just sat there, shaking. We didn't go to Dallas. We booked a room in Waco instead, at some crappy roadside motel. I didn't sleep. I don't think Kyle did either. The next morning, we tried to retrace the route to prove it to ourselves, but we couldn't find the turnoff. I know that sounds like a cliché, but I swear we drove up and down that stretch of highway 4 times. Nothing matched. The GPS history had no record of that detour. Even my phone's map timeline, you know, the one that tracks your movements, just showed a straight shot along I-35. No rural roads, no side streets, nothing. We told a couple of friends about it afterward, got some laughs, heard theories. Maybe it was an old chop shop. Maybe you imagined it. Maybe someone was trying to lure you. All possible, I guess. But here's the part I never told anyone. 2 weeks later, I was scrolling through a missing persons thread, one of those local Facebook groups where people post about runaways or disappearances. Most were just sad stories, people looking for family members or friends. But one post had a picture of a toddler's car seat, black with orange stripes. The caption read, "Last seen in a 2009 blue Ford Explorer near Robinson TX. Vehicle has not been recovered. That was the last time I ever drove at night through backroads in Texas. And to this day, every time my GPS says rerouting, I get this cold knot in my gut, like I'm waiting for that voice to tell me to turn onto another dirt road, one that isn't on any map, one that doesn't want to be found. I don't know what we saw that night, but I'm starting to think it wasn't meant for us." It's been about 6 years now since it happened, and I still refuse to drive that stretch of I-20 after dark. Honestly, I don't even like talking about it, but I'm hoping putting this out there might help me sleep a little better. Maybe someone out there has seen something similar. Maybe I'm not insane. This happened in late September 2019. I was living in Dallas at the time, working a job I hated, tech support at a call center. But it paid the bills. My girlfriend at the time had just moved to Atlanta for grad school, and I'd drive out to visit her when I could. It's about a 12-hour drive, give or take, so when I had a long weekend, I'd hit the road around 5 or 6 p.m. and just drive through the night. I've always liked night driving. The roads are quieter, music sounds better, and something about those long stretches of empty highway feels peaceful, like the world's asleep and you've got it all to yourself. Anyway, it was a Friday night, September 27th, 2019. I remember that because I had a really rough shift that day, and I almost canceled the trip. I didn't get on the road until a little after 7:30 p.m. I'd fueled up, got a Red Bull and some sunflower seeds, and I was set. The weather was clear, no fog, no rain, around 70 degrees when I left. Cool for Texas, but comfortable. I took I-20 east, like always. The first few hours were uneventful. Passed through Tyler, Longview, and into Louisiana without much trouble. I had a playlist going, some true crime podcasts, and just cruised. By the time I hit the Mississippi border, it was close to midnight. That's when it started. I was about 15 miles past Jackson, so somewhere between exits, nothing but trees and the occasional exit sign, when I noticed headlights in my rearview mirror. Now, that's not unusual, obviously, but what caught my attention was how fast they came up behind me. Like really fast. I was doing around 75 in the right lane, and these lights were so bright they lit up the inside of my car like high beams. I figured it was some jerk in a lifted truck or something tailgating me to make me move over. So I did. I switched into the left lane to let them pass. But they didn't. They stayed right behind me. Same distance. Still blinding. I slowed down a little from 75 to about 65, expecting them to pass me on the right. Nothing. I was starting to get annoyed. I even muttered something like, "All right, what the hell is your problem?" to myself. I flicked my mirror up to block the glare. Still no movement. So I got off at the next exit. I figured maybe it was someone being weird or road raging, and I didn't want to deal with it. The exit was unmarked, one of those small rural ones that just leads to a dark service road or a patch of trees. I rolled onto the shoulder and let the car idle, watching my mirrors, and that's when I realized the lights were gone, not fading into the distance, not pulling off behind me, just gone. There was no sound, no engine, no tires, no Doppler effect. 1 second they were there, flooding my car with light. The next, total blackness behind me, like someone flipped a switch. I sat there for a minute, confused, looked behind me, nothing, not even distant headlights, just empty road. Then I got this weird feeling, like the air had thickened. You know when you're being watched? That itchy feeling between your shoulders? It was like that, but worse. It felt wrong, like something was waiting, just out of view. I didn't want to stay there any longer than I had to. I pulled back onto the highway and kept driving, trying to rationalize it. Maybe they turned around and went back the other way. Maybe they pulled off earlier, and I didn't notice. But the highway had no exits for at least a mile before that. I would have seen them. I brushed it off. About 20 minutes later, just past Meridian, Mississippi, I noticed the lights again. Same ones, bright, pure white, no flicker. They just appeared behind me, like someone switched them on out of nowhere. But this time, they weren't tailgating. They were following at a distance, maybe 100 feet back. I kept checking my mirrors every few seconds. No variation in speed, no signs of turning or passing. I changed lanes a few times, slowed down, speed up. Every time they matched me. At one point I pulled off into a truck stop, I think it was an old Love's, and sat there, engine running, watched the highway. No car passed, no one. I waited 5 minutes, got out to pee, went inside, bought another Red Bull just to look normal. Clerk was asleep behind the counter. Whole place was dead quiet. When I got back in the car, the dread hit me like a punch. Those lights were back, in the mirror, same distance, engine off, no sound. I swear to God they weren't there when I pulled in. I would have seen them. The lot was empty except for one semi, parked way off to the side. No other vehicles. But now, right behind me, in my rear view, just blinding white, I jumped, slammed it in drive and tore out of there like a maniac. Merged back onto the highway, doing 85, heart pounding. I kept looking back, but after a few minutes, nothing. No lights, no car, no trace. That was the last time I saw them that night. I made it to Atlanta by about 8:30 a.m. My girlfriend asked why I looked so exhausted, and I told her I didn't sleep well the night before. I didn't tell her anything else, but here's the part that still gets me. About 2 weeks later, I was back in Dallas, scrolling Reddit late at night. I came across a post on r/askreddit, something like, "What's the creepiest thing that's ever happened to you while driving at night?" I clicked it, just out of curiosity. One of the top comments? Driving on I-20 in Mississippi, saw headlights come up behind me, fast and bright, pulled over to let them pass. They never passed, then they were gone. No sound, no trace. The poster said it happened to them in 2013, near Meridian. I messaged them, asked if they ever found out what it was. They replied once, just said no, but you're not the only one. That was it. They deleted their account 2 days later. I don't drive at night anymore, not on I-20, not anywhere rural. I take flights now when I visit Atlanta. Costs more, but I don't care, because sometimes when I'm driving, even in broad daylight, I'll glance in the mirror and see a flicker of light, just for a second, bright and white, too bright, and every time I hold my breath, waiting to see if they'll pass me. They never do. It's been almost 2 years, and I still can't drive at night without gripping the wheel so tight my hands go numb. I tell myself I imagined it, that maybe the exhaustion was playing tricks on me. But then I remember the way my friend screamed, the look on her face, and how dead quiet it got afterward. I haven't told many people, but lately I've been seeing that stretch of road in my dreams again, and he's always there. It happened in February 2023. I was driving back from San Antonio to El Paso, Texas. I had my friend Natalie with me. We were college roommates, both 23 at the time, and we had just spent the weekend with some friends. Nothing major, just beer, bad movies, and decompressing from a rough semester. I had work Monday morning, so we left around 11:30 p.m. Sunday night to make the 7-hour drive. The weather was clear, cold in the low 30s. We were taking Highway 277 near Eagle Pass, a long dark stretch of nothing for miles. That part of Texas feels like a forgotten piece of the world at night, just empty land and occasional flickers of light from ranch houses way off in the distance. No gas stations, no towns, not until you hit Del Rio or farther. I remember checking the dash clock. It was 2:41 a.m. Natalie was half asleep, hoodie pulled over her face, earbuds in. I was trying to keep myself awake with a gas station energy drink and one of those true crime podcasts. I turned it down low when she dozed off. The road was dead quiet except for the hum of the tires and occasional gusts of wind pushing dust across the blacktop. That's when I saw him. At first I thought it was a deer or maybe some rancher broken down on the road, but as the headlights washed over him I realized it was a man, tall, maybe 6'3" or more, standing directly in the middle of our lane. He wasn't moving, just standing, not even flinching as the car barreled toward him. He was wearing a tan coat, one of those long older ones, like trench style, kind of stiff-looking, dark pants, black shoes, and his face, it wasn't right. Not like disfigured or anything, it just looked too blank, like someone had smoothed over all the emotion. His eyes were open but glassy, like he wasn't seeing anything. I swerved hard to the left, narrowly avoiding him. My tires kicked up dust and I almost lost control, but managed to keep us from flipping. Natalie jolted awake, yanked her earbuds out, panicked. "What the hell was that?" she shouted. "There was a guy in the road," I said, breathing hard. "Didn't you see him?" She looked behind us through the rear window, but it was pitch black. No taillights behind us, no reflective signs, nothing. "Who just stands in the road like that?" I muttered, pulling over onto the dirt shoulder. We sat there for a second. My hands were shaking. I was trying to catch my breath. Natalie looked freaked out, but alert now. "You sure it wasn't like a dummy or something?" He looked real, breathing. I saw his eyes. Should we call someone? We thought about it, but what would we even say? That there was a guy standing in the road at 2:40 a.m. It didn't feel like enough to bother 911, and we hadn't hit him, just narrowly missed. After a few minutes, Natalie said, "Let's just go back. Maybe he needs help or something." It wasn't the best idea, but something about it felt necessary, like I'd regret not checking. So I turned the car around and we drove back, slowly, high beams on. We scanned the road carefully. Mile markers, signs, nothing, no sign of him. The stretch of pavement was completely empty. "I swear he was right here," I said. Natalie was leaning forward now, eyes wide. "Are you sure we didn't pass him already?" And that's when she screamed. I slammed the brakes and my stomach dropped. He was there, standing in the exact same spot, same posture, same coat, same blank face, like we'd never passed him at all. I can't explain the way it made me feel. It wasn't like seeing a person. It was like seeing something pretending to be a person, something that had never moved, never blinked, never changed expression. He was just there. Natalie was whispering "no, no, no, no" over and over. I hit reverse without thinking and backed away fast, headlights still fixed on him. He didn't react, didn't turn, just kept standing with his arms at his sides, staring straight ahead, like he was waiting for something. We drove off without looking back. I took the long route after that, cutting east and adding an extra 2 hours to avoid that section of 277. Natalie didn't speak for most of the ride, just stared out the window, clutching her phone. At some point she started crying, quietly. I didn't ask her why. When we finally got home around 9 a.m., I felt like I hadn't slept in years. I was wired and exhausted at the same time. I dropped Natalie off and drove straight to work. I didn't tell anyone what happened. Not my boss, not my friends, not even my dad. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing that figure in my mind, tall, unmoving, standing in the middle of the road like a glitch in reality. And I started questioning myself. Could it have been some kind of prank, a hallucination? But Natalie saw him too, twice. A week later she texted me a blurry photo. No caption, just the photo. It was a grainy dashcam still she'd pulled from an app she uses when we're on road trips. It auto-records and uploads when we drive. In the center of the image, captured for just a moment in the headlights, was the man in the tan coat, blurred slightly but unmistakable. Only, in the still, his head is turned toward the camera, and his mouth is open. I asked her if she'd edited it. She didn't respond. A few hours later, she deleted her Instagram and Facebook, changed her number a month later. I haven't spoken to her since. Sometimes I drive past that road in the daylight, just to prove to myself it's still real.
still just a stretch of asphalt in the middle of nowhere. But I don't go down it, not anymore. And I'll never forget what Natalie said before she stopped talking to me completely. She called me one night, maybe a month after it all happened. Her voice was shaky. She was crying again. I keep dreaming about him, she said. Same road, same place, but this time I'm alone, and he walks toward me. I haven't dreamed of him yet, but I know one day I will. And when I do, I hope I wake up.
Pulled over near a dusty field outside Odessa to stretch my legs. Walked maybe 20 yards and found a makeshift cage, chain link, no door, just sealed shut. Inside was a single child sneaker. No footprints, no tire tracks, just dust and wind. That's how it started. This was back in the summer of 2022. I was driving from El Paso to Houston after visiting my cousin for the week. I don't like flying, so I rented a car and took I-10 most of the way. But somewhere around Odessa, I decided to detour through some back roads to avoid traffic from an accident I heard about on the scanner. It was blisteringly hot, about 103 degrees, and the kind of dry heat that makes your skin feel like it's cracking. I'd been driving for about 5 hours straight, windows up, AC humming, podcasts playing low in the background to keep me company. Around 2:17 p.m., my lower back started to ache, and I figured I should pull over and stretch for a bit. There was this narrow dirt turnoff along the road, no signage, just scrub and mesquite trees. Not much of anything. I remember the road was so quiet you could hear the power lines hum. I parked the car in the dirt, turned off the engine, and stepped outside. The air felt like it slapped me in the face. I walked maybe 20-30 yards out toward a patch of cleared land. That's where I saw it. A square-shaped chain-link cage, maybe 8 feet by 8 feet, standing all by itself in the middle of the field. No door, just chain-link walls connected by rusty poles. The top was covered too, like someone welded or tied it shut, completely enclosed. Not an official animal cage or anything, it looked like something someone built out of scrap, like it didn't belong to any company or government entity. It had been there a while. The base was partially sunk into the cracked dirt. Sand had piled up at the corners from the wind. Inside there was nothing. Nothing except a single tiny sneaker. Blue, faded. Velcro straps. Looked like it belonged to a toddler. Size 6, maybe 7. The kind you'd buy from a Walmart. It was sitting at an angle like someone had dropped it carelessly, or maybe like someone had tried to kick it off. No footprints. No signs of digging or disturbance. No tire tracks or boot prints leading up to it. Just wind blowing through dry grass and a faint metallic rattle from the cage wire. I don't know why, but the whole thing made my stomach twist. I wasn't scared yet, just uncomfortable. Off. The silence out there was different. Heavier. I took out my phone to snap a picture, but the screen just showed black. The battery was at 64%, but the camera wouldn't load. Just black. I backed up, tried again, and the camera worked until I turned back toward the cage. Then black again. I shrugged it off as a glitch, even though my phone had never done that before. I didn't go any closer. I don't know why. I just stared at it for a few minutes. The heat was rising off the dirt in waves, and for a split second I thought I saw movement inside the cage. A flicker of motion like a shadow passing behind the mesh. But there was nothing there. I turned around and walked back to the car, feeling a tightness in my chest. I didn't run, but I didn't look back either. Got in, started the engine, and pulled away. That should have been the end of it. But it wasn't. That night I stopped at a La Quinta in Midland. Nothing special, just a place to crash and get off the road before finishing the drive the next morning. I checked in around 8:40 p.m., grabbed a fast food dinner and watched TV until I dozed off. I woke up around 2:13 a.m. to the sound of knocking. 3 soft knocks, very deliberate. At first I thought it was from the room next door, but then it came again. Knock, knock, knock. This time it was definitely at my door. I sat up, heart suddenly pounding. I hadn't ordered anything. No reason for anyone to be there. The knocking came a third time. Still soft, still slow. I got up and went to the peephole. No one was there. I waited for a while. Eventually I opened the door a crack, chain still on. The hallway was empty, but something caught my eye. Down the hall, about 5 or 6 doors down, lying just outside another room, was a small blue sneaker. Same size, same style. It wasn't there earlier, I was sure of it. I closed the door and locked everything. Deadbolt, chain, even shoved a chair under the handle like I was a kid again. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. Just sat there in the dim light from the bathroom, stomach in knots.
In the morning, the sneaker was gone. I asked the woman at the front desk if anyone had reported kids running around or leaving stuff in the hall. She gave me a weird look and said no children had checked in recently. Most of the rooms were vacant. She even offered to check the cameras, but when I asked later that afternoon, she said the footage from that wing had glitched out between 2 and 3 a.m. Never seen that happen before, she said. I didn't stay another night. The rest of the drive back was quiet. I didn't pull over again. Didn't eat until I got home. I kept checking my rearview mirror every few minutes. I was scared I'd see that cage again somehow, just sitting by the highway like it followed me. A few weeks passed. Life settled back into a rhythm. I tried to forget about it, but one night around 1:30 a.m., I took my trash out to the curb. It was early September, humid and sticky, and the street was dead quiet. I turned to head back inside and froze. At the edge of my driveway, barely visible in the streetlight, was another cage. Same chain link, same size, just sitting on the asphalt near the gutter like it had been there all day. Inside it, lit faintly by the orange glow of the streetlight, was 2 sneakers this time. A matching pair, blue, faded, toddler-sized. I didn't sleep that night either. When the sun came up, the cage was gone. No tire marks, no drag lines, no one on my street saw anything. I even checked the doorbell cam. Nothing. Just static from 1:27 to 5:14 a.m. I never told anyone. I know how this sounds, and I know what people will say. But I swear, something followed me out of that field near Odessa. Something that builds cages. Something that waits. Every now and then, usually when I'm alone or not expecting it, I'll find another sneaker. Once on a park bench, once at the end of a grocery aisle, once on my porch, always the same kind, always impossibly clean, like it just appeared there. And always, I feel this pressure in the air, like the silence before a storm, or the pause between heartbeats. I don't know what it wants, or why it picked me, but I keep thinking about that first cage, sealed shut, no door.
This happened to me about 5 years ago, and I've never really talked about it in full. I've mentioned pieces of it to a couple friends during long drives, or over too many drinks, but every time I try to say it out loud, it comes out sounding wrong, like I'm telling a dream I half remember, except I was awake for all of it. I was living in Austin at the time, working contract security gigs that took me all over Texas. I had this rotation at a warehouse outside of El Paso, 3 weeks on, 1 week off. It paid like garbage, but I was 25, single and broke. The distance didn't matter to me then. I'd just throw on a podcast, stock up on Red Bulls, and drive the full 8.5 hours along I-10 like it was nothing. If you've never driven that stretch of I-10, especially at night, it's hard to explain. It's not scenic, it's just long, straight, and mostly empty. Once you pass Kerrville and Burney, everything sort of flattens out and dissolves into black asphalt, distant barbed wire fences, and low orange lights that flicker without purpose. Gas stations feel like outposts from a different time. There's this weird weight to the silence when you're driving alone for that long. You start to feel like the world ends beyond your headlights. Anyway, I left Austin around 6:15 p.m. on a Tuesday. It was November, and the air had that cold metallic edge to it, not quite freezing, but enough to make your joints stiff. I figured if I left at dusk, I'd hit El Paso around 2 or 3 a.m. and just sleep in my car in the lot before my shift started. I had just passed San Antonio around 7:45 p.m., traffic thinning out, nothing unusual. I remember because I'd just stopped for gas at this creepy little Shell station where the clerk had this dead stare the whole time. Didn't say a word, just rang me up and watched me walk back to my car. That's not the weird part though. What stuck with me, what started it, was about 15 minutes later, just past Borney. There's this overpass on the interstate. I've driven under it probably dozens of times before, but I never really noticed it. It's not remarkable, just a short concrete bridge above the highway. That night there was a man standing on it, not walking, not leaning, just standing completely still, looking straight down at the highway. At me. He wasn't wearing anything crazy. Dark jeans, dark jacket, maybe a hoodie under it. Couldn't see much detail. Just a silhouette against the dimming sky. I figured maybe he was waiting for someone or just being stupid. But the thing that made me really notice, was how still he was. Not even a twitch, not shifting his weight, not turning his head as I passed under, just facing down like a statue. I kept going, chalked it up to some weirdo. I even laughed about it to myself. Said something out loud like, "Get a life, dude." Cracked another Red Bull. Normal road trip stuff. But then 10, maybe 12 minutes later, I see another overpass coming up,
and he's there again. Same posture, same spot, almost identical, just standing there, looking down. I'm not exaggerating when I say I almost swerved. I remember glancing at the clock. It was 8:11 p.m. I was going about 75. I must have blinked 10 times in a row. There weren't any exits between those two overpasses. No time to get off, sprint ahead and climb up again. Not on foot, not even by car unless he was doing 100 and I missed it. My brain scrambled for a rational explanation. Maybe it was a different guy. Maybe the lighting just made it look like the same one. But no matter how I spun it, my stomach was tight in a way I couldn't shake. The third time I saw him was the worst. I'd been driving almost another 40 minutes. I'd convinced myself I was tired, imagining things, that maybe there were more pull-offs or hidden roads I didn't notice. I turned the music up, even called my brother to talk for a bit. I didn't mention the guy felt too dumb to say out loud. But around mile marker 494, I saw a third overpass in the distance. I don't know what made me feel it before I even got close. Some internal alarm, like how animals sense storms. I turned off the music. My skin was ice cold. Every part of me said don't look, but of course I did. And he was there. This time he wasn't alone. There was a second figure, slightly shorter, standing a few feet behind him. This one was turned away from the road, facing the opposite direction. Both of them motionless, both perfectly still in that way people just aren't. I blew past them at 77 miles an hour, didn't slow down, didn't blink. I stared straight ahead like the road was going to split open. I don't know why I didn't stop. I didn't call the police either. What would I have said? Hey, I've seen the same guy on 3 different bridges an hour apart. They'd either laugh or send a wellness check 6 hours later. I drove the rest of the way without music. No Red Bulls, no podcasts, just white knuckles and low beams, waiting for another overpass. But I didn't see him again that night. Not for the rest of the trip. When I got to the El Paso lot at 2:26 a.m., I parked, climbed into the back seat, and dry heaved until my stomach gave up. I didn't even fall asleep, just laid there until the sun came up. I should have let it go after that. Told myself it was a trick of the light, a weird night and nothing more, but it didn't stop. A week later, driving back to Austin, I saw him again. This time it was just once, near Fort Stockton, standing by a signpost on the shoulder, not even on an overpass, just watching cars go by. And when I passed, I saw something flicker in his stance, a shift, like he recognized me. It's been 5 years. I've switched jobs, moved to Oregon. I don't even own a car anymore, but sometimes I'll take the bus to Portland to visit a friend or something. And as we pass under bridges or overpasses, I'll catch myself holding my breath, just for a second, just long enough to glance up through the window and make sure there's no one standing there. And 3 months ago, this is why I'm writing this now, I flew to San Antonio for a wedding, borrowed a rental to drive out to a friend's ranch in Comfort, about 40 minutes away, and there he was, not on a bridge, not by the road, but standing between 2 trees on my friend's land, not moving, just watching. I don't remember driving away. I don't remember anything until I was back in San Antonio, shaking hands cramped on the steering wheel, like I'd been gripping it for hours. I didn't tell anyone at the wedding, didn't even go, honestly. Flew back the next morning. I don't know who he is, or what he is. I've looked into it. Urban legends, folklore, glitches in the matrix, all that garbage. Nothing fits. All I know is this. He was standing on the overpass on I-10 near Borna, just standing there looking down. I passed under, and I swear to God I saw him again on the next overpass 10 miles later. Same man.
This happened about 6 years ago, in early October. I was driving cross-country with my friend Dave. We were both 24 at the time, fresh out of college, and thought it'd be fun to do one last big trip before settling into real jobs. The plan was to head west from Austin and eventually make it to San Diego, just taking our time and camping along the way. It was day 3 of the trip, a Tuesday. We had camped the night before near Marfa, Texas. Real quiet area, lots of desert, open skies. I remember we slept in the car that night because it got too windy for the tent. I woke up around 5:45 a.m. to the sound of sand tapping the windows and the car rocking just a bit. The sky was still dark, but you could see that bluish-pink glow starting on the horizon. We packed up and got on the road early. Around 9 a.m. we hit a diner in Alpine for breakfast. Greasy hash browns, bad coffee, all that. I remember because the waitress had a really raspy voice and called everyone darlin'. We left around 10:30 and started making our way down toward Big Bend National Park. That part of Texas is empty. I mean really empty. You can go for an hour without seeing another car, just desert scrub and mountains in the distance. It was about 91 degrees that day and the sun was brutal. By around 3:15 p.m. the fuel light came on. We had just passed through Terlingua, but we figured there had to be something ahead. I pulled up Google Maps and it showed this place called Pete's Gas 1 mile just off the next road. I still remember the icon on the map was the old-style gas pump with the little handle on the side. I clicked it. There was no website or reviews, but it was listed as open. Coordinates looked good. We turned off onto this dirt road that curved down behind a ridge. It was bumpy, but it looked like a well-used service road. About a mile in, there it was, Pete's Gas, or what was left of it. The sign was the first thing we saw. It was one of those backlit glowing ones on a metal pole, except the light inside flickered like a dying bug zapper. Just the word Pete's was lit. The word gas was half burned out. The building next to it looked completely abandoned, sun-bleached wood, busted windows, and no front door. I don't mean it was open, I mean the door itself was just missing, like someone had ripped it off the hinges and never replaced it. We parked in front of the single rusted gas pump. Here's the weird part. The pump worked. I don't mean it looked functional, I mean it turned on. The little screen blinked to life when I pulled the nozzle out and asked me to insert my card. I remember looking at Dave and laughing. Well, at least something out here's alive. He was less amused. He kept looking at the building like he expected someone to come out. So I swipe my card, it approves the transaction instantly. That was another weird thing. No delay, no signal struggle like you'd expect in the middle of nowhere. It just worked. I started fueling up. The screen said regular minus 2.79. The gas smelled normal. It sounded normal. The meter climbed steadily, gallon by gallon. We filled the tank completely. 13.4 gallons. I put the nozzle back, and a receipt printed. No joke. That's when Dave said, "We should go." He was standing stiff near the passenger door, kind of half turning like he didn't want to put his back to the building. I asked what was wrong, and he just said, "Something's off." So we left. About 10 minutes down the road, Dave's messing with the receipt. He's quiet for a while, then asks, "What year did this place say it was founded?" I said, "I don't think it said." "Why?" He held up the receipt. The top of it had the usual stuff. Transaction approved, Visa debit, 13.4 gal, $37.39. But the station info at the bottom said, Pete's Gas, Pump 1, closed since July 1987. Thank you for your business. We both stared at it. I thought it was a joke at first, like some retro gimmick. But the font wasn't stylized and the rest of the receipt looked modern. I flipped it over, even held it up to the sun to check if it was a prank. Nothing. Just that sentence. Pump 1, closed since July 1987. We were quiet for a long time after that. The car was full of gas, no issue with the drive. We made it to Big Bend, found a place to camp just before sundown, and tried not to talk about it. That night, though, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about that building. The missing door. The silence. No cars. No tire tracks in the dirt. Not even birds in the sky. I thought about how the pump turned on before I even touched it. Like it knew I was there. The next day, curiosity got the better of me. We were already headed back north toward El Paso, so I told Dave I wanted to swing by that road again, just to see. He refused, straight up refused, said he'd wait at a diner back in Terlingua, but he wasn't going near that place again. So I dropped him off and drove back myself. I almost didn't find the turnoff. It was still marked on Google Maps, but when I reached the area, the dirt road was gone. Not overgrown. Gone. Like it had never been there. Just open desert and a barbed wire fence stretching along the edge. No sign. No building. No pump. I even got out and walked around a bit. Kicked at the dirt. Looked for anything. A pipe. A concrete pad. Tire marks. Nothing. Just flat, dry land and the occasional scrub bush. I got back to the car. Checked my phone. No service. I opened Google Maps again, and the pin for Pete's Gas was gone. Just an empty patch with no landmarks. I still have the receipt. It's a little faded now, and the print has yellowed around the edges, but that sentence is still there. I've shown it to people. Some think it's an elaborate prank. Others just shrug and say the system glitched. But glitches don't explain buildings vanishing. Every now and then I think about going back. I even looked up old directories, maps from the 1980s. No record of any gas station called Pete's in that area. No business licenses. No photographs. I even asked a local historical society in Alpine.
The woman on the phone sounded confused and said, "No, darlin', there's never been a gas station south of Terlingua in 30 years, maybe longer. Dave won't talk about it anymore. We lost touch a few years ago, but the last time we grabbed a beer he said something I'll never forget. I asked him, 'What do you think happened out there?' He just looked at me and said, 'I think something wanted to be found.' I don't know what scares me more, that it existed for us, or that it might still be there for someone else."
This happened back in July of 2019, somewhere outside Lubbock, Texas. I had just finished a week-long training conference in Tucson for work, and I decided to drive back home to Little Rock instead of flying. I told myself I'd save some money and maybe get a chance to decompress, clear my head on the open road. In hindsight, that was probably the worst decision I could have made. It was hot, 103 degrees the day I left. I remember because my car's AC had been acting weird, and I kept checking the thermostat on the dash like that was going to help anything. I left Tucson around noon, and figured I'd knock out at least 9 hours before stopping for the night. It was supposed to be a quick pit stop, just food, gas, a bed to crash in. That's all I wanted. By the time I hit the outskirts of Lubbock, it was close to 11:40 p.m. I was beyond exhausted. You know that feeling when your body's running on fumes and your brain starts drifting without your permission? I was there. My eyes were dry from the AC, and I kept thinking I saw movement on the shoulder of the road, like figures that weren't really there. That kind of tired. I took the first exit with a gas station and a couple of sketchy motels. There was a sign for a place called Sundown Inn. It looked old, one of those long single-floor motels with doors that opened directly to the parking lot. The kind of place where you check for bed bugs before you unpack anything. But it was cheap, and I didn't care. I parked under a buzzing floodlight and went into the front office. It was one of those tiny glass booths with faded flyers taped to the window. The guy working the desk was maybe in his 60s with a stained undershirt and yellow teeth. He was watching something on a tiny TV behind the counter, one of those crime reenactment shows with grainy footage and bad actors. I asked if he had any rooms left and he nodded without looking away from the screen. He slid a paper ledger toward me and asked for my license. I filled out my info and he handed me a plastic key tag with a real metal key on it. Room 208. I remember because it felt weird. Most motels I'd stayed in recently had switched to card keys. This was old school, the kind of key you'd see in a movie from the 70s. Anyway, I thanked him, took the key and drove my car a few doors down to 208. The lot was mostly empty, a couple of trucks and one SUV parked further down. It was quiet too, no sounds but the buzzing of the light and the occasional gust of hot wind. I walked up to the door, unlocked it and stepped inside. At first I thought the room was empty. It was dark, not pitch black but dim. There was a small lamp on in the corner near the window, just barely lighting up the edge of the room. The air smelled musty like old carpet and cigarettes, and then I saw him, a man, sitting in the armchair by the window, not doing anything, just sitting, perfectly still, facing away from me. His shoulders slightly hunched. I couldn't see his face, just the back of his head and the outline of his arms on the armrests. I froze. It took me a second to process it. I thought maybe I'd walked into the wrong room. Maybe the clerk had made a mistake. I just stood there, holding the door halfway open. I said, "Oh, sorry, I think I got the wrong room." He didn't say anything. Didn't even turn his head, just sat there. I backed out, closed the door gently, and walked quickly back to the office. I wasn't scared exactly, just confused and weirded out. Maybe it was a mix-up. Maybe someone else had rented that room earlier and hadn't returned the key. The clerk looked up as I walked in, and I held up the key. "Hey, someone's already in 28, I said, a guy sitting in the chair by the window. The clerk blinked a few times, slowly. Then he got up from his stool. "Sir," he said, walking over to the back wall where the room keys were hanging on hooks. "Are you sure it was 28? "Yeah," I said, and showed him the key tag. His eyes flicked down to it, and he went pale, like the blood drained from his face, kind of pale. He looked at the key in my hand, then back at the board behind him. "That's not possible," he said. "What do you mean?" He hesitated, then took the key gently from my hand, like it might bite him. "We haven't used 28 since the fire," he said. I just stared at him. "What fire?" He didn't answer right away, just kept looking at the key like he was trying to figure something out in his head. Then he turned and opened a drawer under the desk and pulled out a ring of old keys, flipped through them, and held up another one, almost identical to the one he'd given me.
"This is the real 28 key," he said. "I pulled it out of use after the fire last year." He showed me the tag. Same font, same number, but this one had soot stains along the edge, like it had been in a fire. The room's been closed off ever since. No power, no furniture, nothing in there. I asked him if maybe someone broke in, or if a homeless guy was squatting there. He shook his head, said the room was still sealed, padlocked from the outside. I could go look if I wanted, so we did. He grabbed a flashlight and walked me over to the far end of the motel. The numbers went up, 24, 25, 26, and then 28. The door was locked with a rusted padlock through the handle. A layer of dust covered the bottom half. The windows were boarded up from the inside. He shined the light through a crack in the boards. The room was empty, gutted. Just a bare mattress on the floor and some charred remains near the window. I could see black smoke stains along the ceiling. He turned to me. "No one's been in here for months." We both stood there for a second, not really knowing what to say. I didn't stay at the Sundown Inn that night. I drove another hour east and crashed at a Comfort Inn just off the highway. I didn't sleep much. Later, I looked up anything I could find about a fire at the Sundown Inn. There were no official reports, no news stories, but I did find a comment on a local forum, buried in a thread about old motels in West Texas. Someone wrote, "Avoid the Sundown. Room 208 is cursed. Guy died in there sitting in the chair by the window. They say he was waiting for someone." I never found out who he was, or how I got that key, or where it came from. I still have it, by the way. The one the clerk gave me, the one he swore wasn't on the board. I didn't give it back. I don't know why. It's in a drawer in my desk, wrapped in a napkin. Sometimes, late at night, I swear I can hear something shift inside the drawer, like metal sliding across wood, like someone turning in a chair, waiting.
This happened in February of last year, and I still think about it way more than I want to. My girlfriend and I were doing one of those cheap, improvised road trips. We'd just finished college and didn't have the money for flights or hotels, so we were crashing in her car when we had to. It was a beat-up white Subaru Outback she'd had since high school. Smelled a little like old fries and coconut air freshener, but it got us where we needed to go. We were driving from Austin to Shreveport, visiting her uncle, and decided to leave late around 9 p.m. I remember that because I stopped for gas and a Red Bull right before we got on I-20, thinking it would keep me awake. It didn't. Around 2:30 a.m. I started drifting off behind the wheel. My eyes were burning and I kept missing turns on the GPS. She offered to drive, but I didn't want her taking the wheel in the middle of the night, especially on roads we didn't know. So we pulled into this rest stop outside Tyler, Texas. It wasn't much, just one of those roadside pull-offs with a few vending machines and a bathroom that looked like it hadn't been cleaned in a year. No security lights, no staff, just a couple dim poles casting light over the cracked pavement, and a trash bin overflowing with fast food wrappers. We parked under one of the lights. I remember thinking it looked a little flickery, like the bulb was dying, but it felt safer than the pitch black beyond the trees. She reclined her seat all the way and fell asleep almost instantly. I leaned my seat back too, but sleep came in that half-conscious way, the kind where you're still aware of every creak of the car, every gust of wind. The heater clicked a little. Something rattled in the glove compartment. I kept one eye half open for a while, and then I must have nodded off for real because the next thing I remember was her whispering my name. "Tyler, hey Tyler, wake up." It was barely a whisper, but urgent. I rubbed my eyes. The windows had fogged up slightly from our breath and the car was cold, the kind of cold that creeps into your jacket and makes your teeth ache. I looked over at her and her face was pale, lit by this faint bluish light coming through the windshield. She didn't look at me, just stared out her passenger side window. I followed her gaze. There was a dog sitting outside her window, just sitting, perfectly still. It looked like a German shepherd, maybe a little bigger, with thick dark fur. Not mangy or wild-looking, but it wasn't wearing a collar either. Its ears were up, head tilted slightly like it was listening. But it wasn't panting or blinking, it was just watching her. I remember a weird hollow sound filled my ears, like a low pressure or static. I thought it was the car at first. I whispered, "What the hell?" and sat up straighter. The dog didn't flinch, didn't react at all. It was maybe a foot away from the window, just watching her like it had been there the whole night. I started the engine. The headlights flared on, and for a split second they hit the thing full on. It was gone. Not ran off, gone. There was no movement, no scuffling pause, no turn and dash, just the empty patch of gravel and yellow grass. She gasped and fumbled for the lock button like it was going to do anything. I opened my door and stepped out with the flashlight on my phone.
The cold smacked me in the face. It had to be in the low 30s, and everything was dead silent. No bugs, no cars, just this thick, wet stillness like the air before a thunderstorm. I looked all around the car, nothing. I checked for paw prints in the dirt next to her window, nothing. No smudges on the glass, no condensation where it might have breathed, just nothing. I got back in the car, and we drove. Didn't say much after that. I think we both hoped the other had imagined it. But then something happened a couple weeks later that still bothers me. I was back home in Austin, and I woke up one night at around 3:15 a.m. My room was freezing. At first I figured the heater kicked off or something, but when I sat up I noticed the window was cracked open, just a tiny bit, like an inch. I never sleep with it open. And on the glass, there were 2 faint smears, at head height, like something had pressed its nose against it. I didn't tell anyone, not even her, but the weirdest part? A few nights later she called me crying, said her dog, a golden retriever she'd had since middle school, had gone missing, vanished from their backyard with the gate still locked. No tracks, no sound. She didn't bring up that night at the rest stop, neither did I. I don't know what we saw. I don't know if it was a dog. Sometimes I tell myself it was just exhaustion, or a trick of the light, or a weird dream we had at the same time. But every so often, I'll wake up in the middle of the night and think I see something sitting outside my window, just far enough away that I can't make out the details. I never keep the blinds open anymore, and I haven't stopped checking for paw prints.
This happened in the summer of 2019, when I was driving cross-country from Georgia to Arizona. I had just finished a bad breakup and wanted time to myself. No planes, no hotels, just me, the car, and the road. It felt like something I had to do, like I was purging part of my old life. It was early July, hot as hell already by 9 a.m., and I'd made it to Texas by the 3rd day of driving. I took a less traveled route, avoiding the major interstates. I liked the emptiness of back highways. There's something oddly peaceful about going long stretches without seeing another car. But there's also something I don't know, exposed about it too. On the day this happened, I remember checking my phone when I stopped for breakfast. It was 10:47 a.m. I was in some dying town with only a diner, a gas station, and a boarded-up post office. I had eggs, toast, and coffee at a place called Kathy's Kitchen. The waitress looked like she hadn't smiled in a year, and the only other person there was a guy in the corner booth staring at a newspaper that looked 10 years old. No music playing, just the hum of the fridge behind the counter and the occasional clink of silverware. It was off. Anyway, I left the diner around 11:20 and figured I'd top off my tank before heading out. The gas station was a mile down the road, the kind of place with peeling red paint, faded signage, and one dusty pump that looked like it hadn't been upgraded since the 80s. The kind of station where you half expect a dog to be sleeping under the porch and a bell to ring when you walk in. Except there was no dog, no bell, just dry heat and a creeping silence. The station was empty except for an older guy behind the counter. He looked like he could have been the same age as the building, gray beard, trucker hat, sun-dried skin. Didn't say much except, "Pump works, pay after." No smile, no small talk. I nodded, filled up, and left the car running with the AC on low. Here's where things get weird. My windshield was dirty, especially the back one. Dust, dead bugs, a smear where I'd wiped it with a napkin the day before. I remember thinking I should clean it, but I was tired and figured I'd wait till I hit a proper car wash. I went inside the station to use the restroom and buy a bottle of water. Was gone maybe 5-6 minutes tops. When I came back out, the gas was done and the pump had clicked off. I was walking back to my car when I saw it. Someone had written in the dust on my rear windshield, "Don't stop again." 3 words, big letters, clear finger marks. It stopped me in my tracks. I looked around immediately, heart picking up a little, but there was no one. The lot was empty. Just my car, the pump, and the station. No other vehicles. No movement. I went back inside and asked the clerk if he saw anyone come through. He shook his head. "Ain't nobody been out there but you." "You sure?" I asked. He gave me a look. "I've been right here." I walked back out, pacing a little, trying to convince myself it was a joke. Maybe the guy in the diner. Maybe he followed me. But how? I hadn't seen a single car between there and here. The road was dead. Even if someone had shown up, I would have heard them. The gravel crunches loud under tires in places like that. I wiped the message off with the edge of my shirt and got in the car, locked the doors, drove away faster than I probably should have. About 30 miles later, I stopped again at a more modern gas station just outside a town called Stanford. Needed to use the bathroom again. Nerves mostly. This time I made sure to watch my car from the window while I was inside. Nobody touched it. I didn't sleep well that night. I stayed at a cheap motel and kept the curtains open so I could see the parking lot. Nothing happened, but I woke up several times, heart racing like I'd been running, dreaming of that message. Next morning I checked my car again. No new writing. No signs anyone had touched it. I kept driving west, took a different route, sticking closer to cities after that, avoided back roads. By the time I made it to Arizona, I'd convinced myself it was just a local messing with me. Some weird Texas prank or a bored kid hiding out behind the building. But the thing is, I never heard or saw a single person that whole time, and the message looked like it had been written slowly, deliberately. Not a quick swipe. Someone had taken their time. Still, I put it behind me, moved into my new place, started fresh. Things were fine for a while until 2 weeks ago. I was washing my car in the driveway. It had gotten dusty again. Arizona life. As I was rinsing the back windshield, something caught my eye. It was faint, but I swear I could still see the outlines of those words. Don't stop again. Almost like it had been etched into the grime. Not fresh, not visible from most angles, but still there, like it had sunk into the glass itself. I tried Windex, even a magic eraser. Nothing got it off completely. You can only see it at certain times, like dusk, when the light hits it just right. I haven't told anyone about this. What am I supposed to say? Hey, remember that time someone left a creepy message on my windshield in the middle of nowhere, and now it's ghosting me through my glass? They'd laugh. Or worse, think I'm making it up. I've been having weird dreams again lately. Not nightmares exactly. Just unease. Always the same setting. A gas station in the middle of nowhere. Sun hanging low and red like it's stuck between rising and setting. My car is there. I'm inside, staring out through the grimy glass. Someone is standing just behind the pump, but no matter how I move, I can't see their face. The dreams always end the same way. I hear the pump click off, and when I walk outside, I see the back of my car, and there's a new message, but I never remember what it says when I wake up. I haven't stopped on any road trips since then. Haven't taken any. Haven't even left the city. But every time I clean the windshield, I look for that message again. Sometimes I see it, sometimes I think I don't, but deep down I'm afraid it's always there, waiting, just like whoever or whatever wrote it.